Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are glad to have you all here as we bring in from Australia, Attila Kaldy will join us. Yes, there are UFOs in Australia. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into so much more, and I hope you guys sit back, relax, and enjoy the woo tonight. All right, and let's get right to our roll call, because we have to say hello to Eternity Eternal in the gold medal position. Tim Mothman and his goatee with a silver. Deidre, the hipster, from Vancouver Island with a bronze medal tonight. All right, moving on. Let us say hello to the attorney at large, Michael Morris. Kitty Caddywhack, how are you? Kitty Caddywhack will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Hey, I did some tinkering with the audio here before the show. Can you guys just kind of give me a quick yes, no, if I sound okay? I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Jaquetta, Road Flare, and Mel WD-40 are here. Thank you for coming on in. Mel is lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want any of that rigidness going on. So thank you, Mel, for lubing us on up. T-Bone, my man, how's it going tonight? Glad to have you here. Robert Lamoth, good to see you. Necessary Dialogue, and Mama Catherine. Mwah, I love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful night, and this will kick off a great weekend for you. I promise you. All right, moving on here. Bobbert Gray, good to see you. And who is next on our list? Scrolling on down. There's Cosmic Joe. Deanna Ann, how are you? And Race Fan, way down the list tonight. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. The Christian Wind, welcome to SOR Chat. Oh, is that's Skip to My Lou. Skip to My Lou, good morning to you. Millennium, my man, how's it going? Nina Williams, nice to see you. As we continue on with roll call, Flat 6. I love it. If loving the woo is wrong, I don't want to be right. That is correct. Walter Kochabinski, and number 17 in your program, starting at center ice from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. Big Logic, good to have you back. Undead Jed. Algaray over on Twitch, so excited for Attila. He went and leg pressed 700 pounds 44 times tonight. Kaz, how are you? Thanks for coming on in. As we continue on with roll call, Alien Critter is here. Alien Critter will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. I'm Hardcore on X, JSCO, and in the studio, good to have you all here. Jose Sanchez, thank you for coming on in. And thank you. Kira got me this shirt, T-Bone. Kira got me this shirt 2 years ago. Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, moving on down here. Let us say hello next to, let's see here, 1971 Marmaduke. How you doing? All right, moving on down. Undead Jet again. And Butterfly Bear. Welcome to SOR Chat on X. Fapster, how you doing? And scrolling on down, Cody Eiler. Nice to see you. All right. Erica Stover, thank you for joining us tonight. Queen Peachy Keen, good to have you back. It's been a few weeks. All right, we're caught up. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. One of our favorites from down under, Attila Kaldy, is going to join us. We are going to talk everything from UFOs over Australia to disclosure to cryptids like the Yowie and many more. We are in roll call right now, saying hello to Gizmo, my man. How are you? Philip Blair, good morning to you over in the UK. You're up early for a Saturday. And, yeah. Now we wait. I'm just going to grab a sip of my water here. Hold on. Tracy Winters, how are you tonight? Rock and Rory, thanks for coming on in. Reminder to you, the Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you very, very much. Thank you to everybody who has watched our big our doc on Flight 21. It's almost at 6,000 views already. I'm blown away by that. Our store is open. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Let's do this thing, shall we? You know what to do. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have a great show coming up for you tonight. From Australia, Attila Kaldy will join us here momentarily to talk everything about monsters, legends, UFOs from the beautiful continent of Australia. Then in hour number 3, it will be me. We might do some Q&A. I've asked around to see if anybody wants to join us tonight because Lee is out on a camping investigation. So we're going to figure out what we're going to do in hour 3. But Swamp Dweller will be here. Bet your mark on that. That's a good bet in Vegas. All right, let's get right to it. Let us move on. Sydney-based freelance filmmaker Attila Kaldy began his first project in the early 2000s with a short documentary film based on UFO encounters. Since then, he has been involved in over 20 different media projects, mostly covering different aspects of the unexplained. His recent project, he has a project called Tracking the Lore. It's a sequel to his previous documentary. He's been on Spaced Out Radio before. He's an amazing guest, eloquent with his knowledge, so let's just stop wasting time and bring him right in. Attila Kaldy, it is great to have you back on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. How are you?
G'day, Dave. How are you today, mate? Thank you very much for having me back. It's a pleasure.
I'm not hearing you, my friend. What is going on here? What is going on here? Let me just try something here. Hold on. Let's see. Let's try something here. Let's just go. Oh, goodness. Let's try this. What should we try? You know what's weird is I could hear you perfectly during the show. Do you have your microphone on mute?
No, I don't actually. No.
All right. Well, now we got you. Now we got you.
Oh, awesome. Great stuff.
Let me ask you. You've been doing this a long time, tracking down UFOs, tracking down monsters and legends from your beautiful continent. Why do you do it? What's the thrill in it?
Well, it's a good question, actually. Why shouldn't I do it? I think that's my response. Um, this is a type of topic that has always fascinated me. And I know that a lot of people actually say that, but it actually roots back to my childhood and this curiosity and this thirst for knowledge and understanding more about this hidden world that lives around us has I think been one of the major driving forces for me. And I dare say that a lot of people out there who do similar things would probably be in a very similar situation. So it's one of those things. I've actually, funny enough, I've tried to deviate away from paranormal content and do other things, but it's just doesn't work out. The paranormal always seems to call me back and draw me back with new projects around the corner. So as much as I try to deviate away from the topic, I just can't do it. It's almost like something is pulling me back and asking me to do more. So I don't think it's anything special, but I think it's just this inner connection that I have, this thread that I have that's somehow tapped in to this amazing world that all of us seem to admire at some level.
Isn't it weird how, you as a filmmaker and a documentary maker, you try something else, it doesn't have that zest or that thrill that hunting monsters does. And also, I'm sure it affects the ratings too, because for as many people out there who say they don't believe in this stuff and they don't follow this type of subject matter, numbers show that this type of programming is highly successful.
It is, but I guess for me, it's a bit different because I do it because I have this this insatiable passion that I have for it. So it's more of an inner drive that that sort of pushes me forward. But look, I think you're spot on. There is, I think there's more and more awareness, and especially with the way media has evolved over the past few decades, the awareness towards the unexplained has also increased and has provided information to many people who beforehand were either on the fence or refused to believe it. But in my experience, it only comes down to one personal encounter to change one's sort of philosophy towards the paranormal.
You have chased down UFOs, you've chased down ghosts, you've chased down monsters like the Yowie and other legends of Australia. What's your favorite?
It's like asking me which one's my favorite child.
I know I put you on the spot here, my man.
You have. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
Anytime.
I really don't, to be honest. I think there is a level of intrigue that each topic has on its own that just stirs this incredible curiosity. It's really, really difficult to say I prefer this over something else. I have, like, for the past few years, I have actually put 110% of my focus on cryptids because that was something that was drawing me in. It was an accidental sort of trip that led me to do these two documentaries on Yowies and Australian Bigfoot. But now I have this draw towards the UFO element of the paranormal, and I really couldn't tell you which one sort of tops it for me. I think I'm very much story driven and I love a good story, and if there's something out there to investigate, I'll be out there. And I have done that recently too with the UFO documentary.
So the fact that you love these topics, do you have a hard time choosing what you're going to do next or why you're going to do it?
Dave, really what happens is that it seems that the topic chooses me rather than the other way around.
Well, that's interesting.
It's, yeah, it's almost like a story emerges and comes to me. My wife and I have had this conversation on a number of occasions. And, when I'm in a project, I'll tell her, gee, I wonder what the next one's going to be. I really need to start sort of concentrating on what the next project's going to sort of what I'm going to be targeting. And then she tells me, she says, look, she says, just as always, just wait for it to fall into your hands. And lo and behold, it actually does happen. So it's almost like the story finds me and I just go with the flow.
It's almost like you're channeling these stories.
That's actually a good point, and it's quite a good possibility that that's what's happening. Maybe being tapped into this for so long, that could potentially be the case, and I wouldn't dispute that for a second.
When you started out on this, did you ever think it would lead you this far down the rabbit hole?
Oh, definitely not. No, because, well, see, I first started filming back in the 90s. I had an M7 Panasonic camera, and my parents actually bought it for me back in the late 80s. And in the early 90s, I actually went to Europe when the regime change happened, when the wall came down, so to speak. And my parents went back to Central Europe, where, my heritage is from. And I actually filmed, the newly elected prime minister back then. And I've done shots all around Europe at the time, even during the Yugoslav war. It was, it didn't occur to me until I came back home to Australia, when I got involved with investigating aerial phenomena, that this was a topic that needed a lot of focus and needed proper awareness. And I know that there were a lot of people doing that, and we do get a lot of documentaries, and there's a big focus, as we all know, in the States. Not a great deal is coming out of Australia, and has been. So occasionally we do get the good sort of stuff coming out, but there hasn't been a great deal of focus in this country. So I kind of did it in tandem at the beginning, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I started filming our expeditions and presenting that almost in a documentary style to the public meetings that I was running at the time. And I did that for almost 10 years, when I then decided to sort of do this, focus my attentions completely on filmmaking. And funny enough, it's almost come full circle, because now I've started doing investigations for a Sydney-based UFO organisation.
The way that this has really taken off for you, in making these films, do you just like filming or trying to film the phenomena, or are you looking for specific stories that you are searching?
Originally, the focus was on the phenomena itself, but I'm more focused now on the actual story, the human connection to the paranormal. And everyone has a story to tell. Whether or not that's accompanied by any kind of visual or audio evidence, that doesn't really matter for me anymore. I think for me now, it's more so a focus on the actual connection, the human connection to the paranormal, because for some people it's at surface level, but for some other people it dwells deep into the core of one's personality and character, and even, I dare say, to one's soul as well. So yeah, you do have a mixture of people who have an interest, a surface interest, but you also have people who become so connected that it can become life-changing. And that's what really sort of interests me. That's sort of a focus that I have.
The fact that many people are having these experiences that you just claim are life-changing, and I would 100% agree with you. Tell us a story that affected you from what you've heard from people.
Well, interesting. One of the early ones was a fellow who was a European fellow back in the late 90s. And he actually had an encounter with 5 other people over in southwest Sydney. And this happened during the cold months. And essentially what happened is that he had some friends over one day, and they were going home at night. This was would have been around 9 o'clock at night. And as they're walking out, they see 3 lights in the sky in a perfect triangle. So he rushes in and grabs his video camera and films these 3 lights in the sky. And the visitors were very surprised because there was no sound, there was nothing at all. There was no evidence to suggest that these were some kind of, conventional aircraft that was just sitting in the sky. It was almost like lights that were pasted against the skin of the sky. They were just sitting there motionless. And there's a lot of commotion, so the neighbor comes out and they're all standing there staring at these 3 lights. And eventually they vanish. So he decides to come out about an hour later and in front of his house. And the way he described the next amazing event was almost like what we would regard as the Oz effect. So he walks out, he hears people in the background, dogs barking, bit of traffic noise, and then all of a sudden a sonic boom. Now he's in a fairly sort of in a suburb, or he used to live in this suburb on the outskirts of Sydney. It's not a very highly densely populated area, but it's a suburb nonetheless, and it backs onto a national park. So he hears this sonic boom and everything goes quiet. And he described the sensation as being caught in a bubble of a different reality. The environment didn't change, but everything just went still and silent. The air was silent and still. Everything around him just almost was motionless. And as he's walking down with his camera, he sees these 3, as he described it, classic flying saucers, massive crafts, probably about 3 or 4 times the size of a large home, and moving in a convoy just up the road. And he's running up the street trying to get a shot of it in his video camera. One stops hovering near a house. The other 2 moves on silently and slowly into the distance towards the south. And the 2 stop there. And you can see him running, but the camera is not picking up anything. And all of a sudden, the camera just goes dead. It's still recording. So unbeknownst to him, the camera is still recording, but it's not recording audio anymore. It's not recording any visuals, but it's just still running. And he's sitting there, and he's described it almost like, in his own words, was a donut-shaped type craft with the base rotating with a series of lights. And this thing was just sitting there silently, and it would have been very intimidating for him because it's you see this massive object in the sky and you would expect some kind of sound, but there was absolutely nothing. And then this car turns up and he's waving his video camera and pointing up at the sky. And the people in the car were from South Africa, and the grandmother who was in the car was slapping the son who was driving, saying, "This guy's got a gun, drive on, drive on." And the son drives on and he looks into his review mirror and sees this massive object above this guy, this old bloke who's standing in the middle of the road. So he decides to turn around and gets out. So with him, it was himself, obviously the son, the grandmother from South Africa, his wife and his daughter. And trying to think, because there were 6 independent witnesses. I don't know who the other person was. I can't remember because it happened back in 1999. But anyway, they get out of the car and they're standing there looking at this object. And all of a sudden, the object starts moving away. And as it starts moving away, the guy, this European fellow, is mucking around with his camera. He's trying to get it to work. He wants to film it. He's desperate on trying to get it on camera. And then all of a sudden, he said, okay, it's almost like he had vision on the camera. So he's running up the road And all of a sudden, this object that was left behind moves up to the other two. They merge together as one. And in the words of the son who described the encounter, they just shot up into the sky and disappeared. Now, the guy's camera recorded an hour of nothing. And then we encouraged him to go and see a hypnotherapist because we had a suspicion that there was some lost time. And there was about an hour. Really? So when he went under hypnosis, he actually recalled an event of being taken up into this craft and being subjected to a medical experiment by non-human entities. And the hypnosis went for exactly a whole hour, as long as the videotape was running, recording nothing, as long as they record the time, because they believed about 10 minutes had passed. But in fact, then a whole hour had passed. So they were caught in this almost like a space-time dilation field, almost, for them anyway. And when I heard all this was something that prompted me to form this UFO society in Southwest Sydney. And yeah, it kind of changed my outlook towards the UFO phenomenon and what else there is out there.
It is such a remarkable scene to have a UFO close encounter. I mean, the fact that these guys had not only a sighting, they had a close encounter, now they have missing time, alien abduction that they've recalled. I mean, really, that's as good as it gets right there.
Oh, pretty much. They had the whole package, really, if you think about it. The problem is that the father actually died from cancer, and so did the mother. So not long after the encounter, probably about 2 or 3 years after the encounter. So there is a bit of sad story behind this whole event. And we hear that quite often, where people who have contact with these objects there is some kind of physiological effect by getting too close to these crafts.
How often is alien abduction happening in Australia?
Good question. It's not as openly spoken of in this country as it is in many other countries that I guess support and provide understanding towards abductees. There have been support groups in the past in Australia. In fact, a UFO researcher, Peter Curry, was running who was also an abductee, was running a support group for a very long time. I think he started that in the 80s and went all the way into the 2000s. People don't really like talking about these encounters in Australia. In fact, they don't like talking about anything that outside of the norm because of the fear of ridicule. We are still a little bit behind with the acceptance of the phenomena itself, regardless if it's Yowies or any other forms of cryptids or hauntings or UFOs or alien abductions. We still don't have that acceptance here like you guys do. And I envy you guys for that, and my hat down to everyone over there, because there are so many. I hear about so many support groups and people speaking openly, and large conferences that take place where people can come together and discuss this openly.
Attila, I got so many questions to ask you, and I'd ask you another one right now, but literally we are running out of time until we get to the bottom of the hour break here. So I'm just going to put the brakes on so we can go to break and continue with this awesome subject of UFOs and alien abductions from Australia. Attila Kaldy is here. He's a researcher. He's a documentary filmmaker. He's got great hair and goatee combination. It doesn't get better than that when you're dealing with that beautiful down under accent. So this is Spaced Out Radio, everybody. My name is Dave Scott. We're going to continue learning of these incredible stories when we return on the Mighty SOR. Stay tuned. All right, I lost my music now. Hold on.
Oh.
Let's figure this out. Okay, so it's not that one. It's not that one. What one is it? Testing 1, 2. All right, now let's try this. Hold on. Okay. That would be why. Are you guys hearing that sound? Can you hear that, Attila? The music?
I hear your voice, but nothing else, mate.
Okay. Hold on. How about now?
Just hearing you.
Okay, I don't want to go there again because that cut you off while we were on the air. Maybe that's the reason why. Hold on. Let's just keep it there. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, I don't want Swamp Dweller yet. Hold on. Let's just play that. Okay, that. All right. Dave 101. All right. Let's try that one. Do you hear the music there?
No.
Damn it. Okay, what are we doing here? Dave's a killer. Dave's a mess. Wrong button. All right, that's not working. So we need that there in order to make that happen. But why are we not getting audio on this side? Let's try this for a second. Cable output. But which one is that? Cable input, input, input. Sorry, I'm just trying to track all this down here.
No, that's all good, mate. You need to do what you need to do. That's fine.
Scott Rosen, how you doing this morning? Or this evening? Pardon me. All right. Let's cable output. Let's try that one. All right, let's see if this works. Do you hear that?
Just your voice.
That's just my voice. All right. Try that one. You hear me now?
I hear you. Yep.
You hear the music?
Negative.
Bastard. Any music now?
No.
Do 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 do. Well, what the Sam Hill is going on here? Try this one. Nothing there? Because it would be... That should be right there. I'm stumped.
You have ghosties in your room, mate. That's probably what it is.
Let me just quickly try something here. Hold on.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you hear it now?
No.
How about now?
Hear it now.
You hear it now?
See, you're really upset about
Yep.
this. I honestly think you want to sit down calmly, take a stress.
Well, let's just leave it where it is.
Alrighty.
Rid of that gremlin. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. From Australia, we're talking UFOs and alien abduction. Attila Kaldy is here. He's a documentarian. He is a researcher into these great subjects. Thank you, Attila. By the way, I need to know, because you live in the future, how's tomorrow looking? Am I alive? Am I alive?
So far, so good, Dave.
Yes, I made it. That's why I love having Australian listeners, because I can always find out if I'm alive tomorrow. It's beautiful. You guys are such futurists. Let me tell you.
Right?
I know. All right, let's get into the UFOs here for a second, because right before the break, we were talking about alien abduction and missing time, that one of the cases you covered actually was checking on out. So I'm curious, when you hear a story, what is a story you want to film? Tell me about it.
I think having a compelling story is very important, and something that has merit, something that has, truth behind it. So I think, first of all, it needs to be truthful. It needs to be compelling, and it needs to, I think, stand out from all the rest. So, for example, someone who's seen lights in the sky, that's fantastic, but then if you have someone who starts talking about, like I just mentioned, this fellow who had this incredible series of encounters, I think we're all, as people, are programmed to wanting to know more and delving deeper into certain topics, and want to get to the nuts and bolts of certain things. So sometimes there's a story that you can cover in a matter of a few minutes, but then there are stories that actually need a proper investment to tell it properly. So yeah, I'm always looking for something that is a compelling story, something that definitely has the merit to invest time and money and effort into it.
For us in North America, what is the biggest UFO story in Australia, historically?
Ooh. Well, historically speaking, obviously, you mentioned Roswell. Everybody knows about that. Kecksburg incident is another one, which is, I guess, is well known, more so in the UFO community.
But in Australia,
that's Australian phenomena. Definitely the Westall 66 case and the Valentage disappearance over Bass Strait between Australia and Tasmania. So they're the two, probably the biggest cases that most people know about.
For people who've never heard those stories, explain what happened there.
Well, the Westall 66 case, that's been, I guess, investigated by a few researchers like George Simpson, who is a UFO investigator in Victoria, and Bill Chalker, who's also a well-known investigator who lives in the Sydney metro area, and he's been investigating since, I think, the late 60s, early 70s. But effectively, in 1966, in Westall, which is in Victoria, a suburb of Melbourne, a number of UFOs were sighted by school kids, and even the teachers had an opportunity to see these crafts. And some of these kids actually came in close contact with these crafts, and there has been there have been accounts where the crafts have actually landed. In one particular area, a craft landed on the ground to avoid aircrafts that were searching for these UFOs. So there were contacts. So obviously these were not just close encounters of the first kind, but also a second kind, because there was physical trace evidence that was left behind. And there was some investigations from the Australian government into this case. So that was quite one of the biggest cases in Australian history, very similar to the one I believe that happened in Africa in the 80s or 90s, I think it was, where school kids actually had contact with a UFO. Where in Westall, there was a number of UFOs. I don't think anyone knows exactly how many there were. Some estimate 2, some estimate 3, some estimate more than that. So quite an incredible case. The Volantage case, that was a flight that happened, I'm trying to think, probably 80s or 90s in Australia. I'm not quite sure exactly when, but I think it was more around the 1980s, 1990s, where a pilot was flying in a Cessna between Melbourne and Tasmania and Hobart. And it was flying between Bass Strait. So it's the water between mainland Australia and Tasmania. And he essentially reported back to air traffic control that he was having an encounter with an unknown object, and it was above him. I don't think he was able to provide a description because it was so brilliant. And all of a sudden, the radio went silent, and Mr. Volantage was never seen again. So his aircraft vanished. And these were some of the main cases, or some of the most popular or well-known, should I say, well-known UFO cases in Australian history. Obviously, there are a lot more, but these are probably the two main ones.
What is the Australian government's take on UFOs?
Yeah, not a great deal. The only access that we have at the moment, so there are disclosure, or there was a disclosure project that was going on back a few years ago. I'm not sure if that's still running. A fellow by the name of Keith Basterfield was running the program. Bill Chalker was also involved in some shape or form. Bill was one of the first civilians back in the late 70s, early 80s, who actually had access to declassified documents that were available at the National Australian Archives. So Bill went tirelessly through these documents. In fact, when he was first there, they presented him with documents, and the clerk or whoever was providing these documents to Bill was informed that they forgot to declassify some of the material, so they had to take everything back and declassify them before they presented it to him. But if you go to the National Australian Archives today, you'll be able to actually, if you type in UFO, you'll actually get a series of documentations that the Department of Air at the time, or the Australian Air Force, was actually involved in assessing some of these reported cases. And these cases would be coming from civilians, they will be coming from military personnel, they'll be coming from civilian pilots. But if you read some of these reports, it's incredible that some of the most popular descriptions or the explanations that were coming from the Australian government was either astronomical or meteorological, or I guess confusion between astronomical bodies such as Venus or even the moon. So these were the classical swamp gas explanations from the Australian government. There were a few that were regarded as unknown, so they weren't able to provide an explanation as to what some of these cases were. But it wasn't a very, as far as we're aware, it wasn't a very committed investigative approach to some of these reports. They almost appear to have taken this sort of blasé approach, and they read the report and they just say, look, just call it astronomical to reduce the amount of paperwork that some of these guys were getting involved in. But these reports are actually available through the National Australian Archives.
You mentioned swamp gas, and it kind of made me snicker a little bit. Are they really using that excuse down there?
Oh, no, I just use that as a terminology now because we're all used to that.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
But what are some of the excuses they are using down there?
Well, today there really isn't anything, and according to the Australian government, there is no official investigative body that's dedicated to investigate UFOs in Australia. Obviously, there is some form of monitoring going on, and who's doing that? It's a good question. I probably, if I had to assume, it would be the Royal Australian Air Force, probably their Air Force intelligence body that would be taking more, I guess, notice of the Australian airspace and what's coming in and what's regarded as anomalous. At this point, that's all we have is just historical documents.
Now, being part of the Commonwealth, like you guys are, like Canada is where I am, we don't have big militaries. We don't have a lot of jets flying in the air. We don't do our own secret technologies that we'll never hear about. We're not developing aircraft. We rely on the United States for their aircraft. I mean, your Air Force and our Air Force have been built by the United States with FA-18 Hornets, Super Hornets, and now I believe for you guys, the F-35.
Yep.
We're not developing these type of technologies that can be accused of in the United States at places like Area 51 or 29 Palms, where Lockheed Skunk Works is located. Do you think that we focus a little bit too much on the American technology over foreign skies like Australia or Canada, where we're thinking it's theirs rather than from out there somewhere?
Yeah, I guess so. It's very hard to really it's a difficult topic. It really is, and I think the issue that we have here is the openness and the information that is available on what's happening above the Australian skies. And it's largely dependent on individuals or the occasional civilian groups, and there's only a handful left. The only one that I'm aware of is UFO Research New South Wales Incorporated, which is based in the Sydney area, and they still hold monthly meetings. So really, there hasn't been a lot of attention focused on Australian skies, and nothing near to what's actually going on in the States at the moment. So it's a tough question, and I really don't know how to give you any kind of definitive answer that would make sense.
Well, I think it's fair because, like Canada, the United States does have, a military presence in Australia. I mean, everybody talks about Pine Gap and the secrets that are there. Many people believe that they are developing or communicating with aliens there. It would be a version of Area 51 for you guys. Up in Canada, we have certain parts of Alberta, like Cold Lake, that are so north that they're and so few populated that you can hide things without it being seen. I mean, so you do have those areas, But in reality, there aren't a lot of technologies being developed to build aircraft of UFO style. Not this UAP crap. Let's talk UFOs.
100%.
Okay. So do you think then that Australians really just in general don't care about this subject? It's not a priority, or are they just closet watchers?
I think there's a combination of many different things there, Dave. I really do believe that. It's a very delicate topic still here. I mean, in Australia, you still get people who, if you bring up the topic of UFOs, you will get the whole sort of giggle factor coming in, people raising their eyebrows and looking at you strange. I don't have a problem talking about it, even in certain areas and environments that I work in and meet people in. And I think it's important to educate people and to provide information to others and to make them aware of the skies above us, and that it's not just what we're told on a daily basis, but also there are things happening out there that are never documented. So, yeah, in Australia, people don't like talking about it. It's still very old-fashioned here. It's very conservative, or we're a very conservative bunch of people here. And it does come – there are people who come forward sometimes, with a bit of arm twist, they'll come forward. But sometimes they just have enough and they just want to talk about it. A classic example, I guess, is a fellow who is a farmer that lives out in rural New South Wales. And I had the privilege of actually being given this case. And this will actually appear in the documentary I'm currently working on, which is titled Archived. And Archived focuses on Australian historical cases and some of the new ones. But we actually had an opportunity to go out there and to investigate this firsthand. And this fellow didn't want to be known. He didn't want to be filmed. He didn't want to be reported. He wanted to stay low key. And he says, look, I just want to know what the hell is going on. Now, this guy is a former government employee. I won't say who or what he was, but and he's got a very rational approach to life in general. But he was seeing these really bizarre lights every single night, and he just didn't know what the hell was going on. So I went out with some equipment, and he said, look, Attila, this is what's happening. And we set up our gear, did time-lapse photography, we had all sorts of gear set up. And when we analysed some of the footage that we took, kind of blew us away. And I provided a report to this fellow and saying, look, you're not going stir crazy at all. What's actually going on around you is actually anomalous. And some of the stuff that we saw were absolutely incredible. I mean, just to give you an example, I had a 150 to 600 mil lens. We had enough light in the sky. And I did a time-lapse photo of an area at 150 mil where these lights were coming and going. And when I analyzed the photo, and the good thing about actually having a full-frame camera as opposed to having a camera lens or having a phone camera, because with the phone camera, obviously you've got a very, very tiny sensor, and as opposed to a light sensor on a full-frame camera. So when I took this photo, I was able to blow it up, and it had a corkscrew motion. And the corkscrew motion was from the point of origin, or where the light appeared, to the point of exit, to where it actually disappeared. And it was almost like it was winding it up really, really quickly, and then boom, vanished. And the first thing that came to mind, damn, I bumped the camera, so I've got vibration. Obviously, this was like a 5 to 10 second time-lapse photo. But when I looked at the stars and when I looked at the background, that's why it's always good to get it when you're doing photos like that, is to have some kind of perspective, something in the background that could give you an idea that the photo that you took is actually either in the sky, not just a blank canvas in your lounge room or somewhere, but it was actually outdoors. And I was able to identify that there was first of all, there was no bumping of the camera because I had a remote cord. There was no wind, and it was actually set on a heavy-duty tripod. So the tripod was quite heavy for the camera, but I had to have a heavy tripod because the lens itself was very, very heavy. So there was no bumping of the tripod. There was no trailing of the stars because it was only a few second video, but nothing suggested that the camera was bumped, and it wasn't because I was monitoring that. But the other thing that supported that was a series of photos that I took afterwards, and you have the trees in focus. There's no ghosting, there's no trailing or ghosting in the actual stars itself, but there's this defined corkscrew shape travel or flight path of this object where it actually vanished. So when I presented this to UFO Research New South Wales in a report and presented it to the actual witness where we were, it actually encouraged him to come forward. So even though we didn't get a video interview of the fellow, I was able to get an audio interview, and he was happy to say, look, I'm happy to go into the documentary. He actually came forward. He was actually there at the night when I presented his case in front of an audience of people. And he stood up and he came to the podium and he spoke himself. So it gave him encouragement to become vocal and to talk about his experience, where before that he was a complete closed door. So I think it was a matter of approach here. It was the support factor that he got. It was the encouragement that he got. And he spoke to people who didn't look at him like an idiot. But this guy is a trained observer. And what he filmed afterwards, and he actually went out and bought some expensive equipment. And by gee, some of the stuff that he filmed afterwards were mind-blowing. So this is what we're faced with in Australia. So yes, we do have this very conservative attitude, but all it takes sometimes is just a little bit of nudge and a little bit of encouragement and understanding, and also spending the time to investigate some of these cases and validating them to the people. And if for some reason there is some logical explanation, like a drone or some kind of DJI drone or some other form of, man-made or conventional aircraft, he was open to that. And then that would have been it. Case shut. We could have walked away and say, case solved. We know exactly what we're dealing with. And again, we had something similar in Adelaide, where we had a collision of two UFOs and one came down. And the guy was an ex-police officer. So, these are some of the stuff that's actually happening in the Australian skies, but you don't hear about it. And that's because one is the government is very close about any kind of topic on aerial phenomena and what's happening in the Australian skies. And two, we have a population of people who are also conservative and don't want to talk about it because of the fear of ridicule. This is how we were raised up. And especially some of the old school people, like from our generation, they know that their parents would have told them, look, you can't talk about this stuff because you're going to lose a reputation. People are going to think you're an idiot and they'll lock you up. So, It's a tough one in this country. It's a very tough nut to crack.
I can totally see that. Totally see that. I mean, with 1 minute to go here, just before we got to go to break at the top of the hour, I mean, knowing that this topic seems so both obtuse, obstructed, and maybe even ignored, how do you bring attention to it if people aren't wanting to pay attention?
Well, I guess through media, and that's, I think, it is probably the most powerful tool that we have. And telling these stories to an open public and starting in an area where people acknowledge that there are things like this. And the perfect platform is where you guys are, even for us, to start at a place where people are open to the topic and who know what this is, and will eventually make its way to the Australian audience as well. So I think media is a very, very powerful tool, and I think it's also very important how you tell the story. It really comes down to how you convey that information to the audience. Is it going to come through like this? If you look at some of the old Australian mainstream stuff about UFOs, it was labeled as kooky stuff.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Attila Kaldy, we got him for another hour on Spaced Out Radio.
Sorry.
This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, we are clear. We are clear. You
Awesome.
heard the music that time, right?
I did, yes.
Perfect.
I don't hear it now, but I heard it before, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's off now. I'm just going to put you in the green room. I will be right back, and we'll be back in about 5.5 minutes on the show, okay?
Sounds good.
Be right back, everybody. right, I'm back. And let's add Attila back in here. Oob to Joe's Bane, you got aliens. Yes, you do. Scott Rosen, how you doing? Anastasia, nice to see you. All right. Let's see here. So far, it's a great show. Absolutely. If you want to ask him questions, put them in capital letters, please. And thank you to T-Bone with our lone super chat tonight. Great. Thanks for you, my friend. Appreciate that. And here we go. Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. We appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to say hello to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. All right, the Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Balbutiant. Balbutiant is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's bring in our guest. Attila Kaldy is a filmmaker, director, producer, as well as a researcher into everything weird and strange. Now, we've talked a lot about UFOs and alien abductions here. What is the best alien abduction case in Australia?
Oh, okay. Good question. That is something you've put me on the spot there. I mean, the one that really stands out is the one that I spoke about that happened back in 1999. Peter Curry's case was quite an interesting one where he was visited at home by non-human intelligence. So his case was quite profound, actually, and very, very detailed with his experience. But yeah, there have been a few cases in Australia, but they haven't been, I guess, publicised as much. Let's say, like the Betty and Barney Hill case and some of these older ones over in the States. So for me, I think because I was involved in discussions with the witness of this case back in 1999 in Southwest Sydney, for me that kind of stands out a fair bit. There was a case that happened that not many people actually know about, and we kind of suspect that there was an abduction involved, and that involved 3 young girls back in the early 2000s, which essentially was we were brought to our attention by the actual father. And these 3 girls used to live with their parents on a rural property. In fact, there was 2 sisters, and they had a friend who used to visit on a regular basis. They would actually go to the rooftop and watch satellites with their binoculars. But one evening, they discovered there was a strange light in the horizon that was moving very, very slowly. And that was accompanied by a much smaller light that was creating these zigzag movements, almost like in a triangular shape in the sky. But as they disappeared, a 3rd light appeared, and that kind of started landing in this paddock in the neighbouring property. And they through the binoculars, actually saw this craft in great detail, and they all drew. In fact, we got them to draw the object down independently, and it was a classical disc-shaped object with rectangular windows on the actual dome itself, and it was just hovering above the ground. And they were called, so they rushed down. They were actually called in for dinner, so they rushed in and told the parents, but the parents thought that the girls were playing games, that they were imagining all this. And after dinner, they went back. They didn't see the object for a few seconds, and as they went back onto the roof, the object then reappeared again, and it hit them with this yellow light. And apparently the light was shot up on a 45-degree angle, and then it basically bent itself in midair and projected the beam onto the three little girls. And they claimed that they lost about 20 to 30 seconds. But when we discussed with the father, he said that there was a time that was about half an hour where they heard nothing of the kids, because they were quite rowdy. They were, obviously carrying on and being excited on what they saw. And when this beam stopped, one of the girls found herself on the ground. Now, had she fallen off, she would have injured herself quite severely. And she ran inside crying. The other two girls came down and they called the parents. So the father came out, and by the time he came out, the object had already disappeared. And there were also claims that one evening, one of the girls were visited by a small figure that resembled a grey alien. But what was curious also is that night when the girls went to bed, they all had stomach pains and nosebleeds. They didn't go to school the following day. So obviously there was some kind of reaction to either the light source or to something that happened afterwards. So we believe that there was some kind of contact involved, but unfortunately, we couldn't get any more details out of the girls because we knew there was something else going on.
That sounds absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. What's your closest encounter?
Mine? Well, I had one over in Northern Beaches in 2001 when we were there was a massive influx of UFO reports that were coming through a network called the Australian UFO Research Network. And the reports were overwhelming. And the state director of the New South Wales state director was actually wiring all these reports over to us. And we were getting like at least a dozen reports a week. So we decided to go and investigate this for ourselves. And when we got out there, we actually saw a light that came in from the open ocean. And this was at night. And we had quite a decent vantage point looking north. And if anybody wants to look it up, it's actually called the Long Reef in Collaroy, North Sydney. And it's actually a peninsula that stretches out into the ocean. So you got this really nice view towards the north and a view, obviously, of the open ocean. And this light source would come in just above the water. And as it's coming in, it would stop, sitting above the water, not far from the actual shore, and would hover there for a few seconds and then submerge into the water and disappear. And this repeated itself 2 to 3 times. And then about half an hour later, there's this really brilliant light that was coming almost in towards our direction and above the trees, and it would stop at a 45-degree angle. And it was so brilliant. And I thought, well, this has to be a helicopter. I had a telescope with me with a 24mm eyepiece in there, and we had a look, and we saw this almost triangular shaped craft that was hovering there on its tilted a little bit with a very brilliant dome in the center of it and 2-tiered lights on each end of its wing. And it was just suspended in the air, rotating very, very gently. And as I was observing this, I thought, no, darn it, I'm going to get a closer view. So I'm going to run towards the beach. So I'm running in the dark, tripping over, getting myself up. And as I was sort of keeping the light in the corner of my eye so I wouldn't lose it, it just, bam, within a second, it was out in the horizon above the ocean, kilometers away. And then we got buzzed by helicopters afterwards, and we hid because we didn't want to be exposed. So we didn't know what the hell was going on. And when the helicopters vanished, we saw that there was this light source that was sitting way out into the ocean, and this tanker ship turned up, and it went really, really close to this light source, and there was some form of communication going on, because we saw this almost laser-like light being projected from the light into the sky, and then within a few seconds, a light from the sky was projected right onto this light source, which was obviously this craft that was hovering there. But it was very X-File-ish, because this tanker ship just happened to stop right next to this brilliant light, this craft that was hovering above the ocean. And it was extremely intimidating evening. And that was probably the closest I ever got to a craft of unknown origin.
That had to be freaky, all of a sudden having those helicopters come in. How did you know those helicopters were looking for you guys, or were they looking for the UFOs?
We don't know. We were under the assumption that it was looking for the craft, and there was more than one helicopters. The really odd thing was we never saw the helicopters. We saw the searchlights, but we never saw the helicopters themselves. So we didn't see if they were unmarked or what kind of helicopters, or if they were military, or they were some kind of civilian, or some other form of helicopter. We didn't know, but we were hiding, because the first thing that came to our mind, shit, if we get caught, as eyewitnesses to this event, and it could have been some kind of top secret military experiment that was going on at the time that kind of got out of hand. I don't know. I mean, it makes you wonder whether or not the military would be that sort of brazen to fly some kind of top secret aerial vehicle over near civilians. But these helicopters were scanning the shoreline for some reason, and the first thing that came to our mind is hide. Let's just get out of the open view. We don't want to be picked up, because we didn't know if what we saw, we were supposed to see what we saw. So it was the first thing that came to mind, is just hide. Let's just wait until they disappear. My goodness.
Let's get some audience questions here while we continue on. T-Bone has been hitting me up all night. Can you tell us about the Bunyip?
The Bunyip. The Bunyip is an interesting creature, and there are many different types of descriptions as to what this creature is. It's a creature that lives in the water, in billabongs or lagoons. And has been known through Australian Indigenous law for a very, very long time. I mean, obviously, we don't know how long the actual law is, or how old the actual law is, how old the law is. But it is an odd creature, and some people believe that it's actually a water-based Bigfoot, or a Bigfoot that hangs around lagoons and comes out of the water. Some people believe that it's a form of Dogman. And others believe that it's some kind of thylacine that lives near the water. So there's a lot of different types of explanations as to what this creature is.
I didn't realize that you might have Dogmen down there.
We do.
How often are they seen?
Well, that's a good question, because obviously not a lot of these are reported, but through the Australian Yowie research, they do have cases that are sent through that are regarded as obviously Dogman encounters. There was actually two cases here in the outer Sydney area, and one of them actually appeared in Tracking the Law towards the end, where a fellow who was out kayaking, fishing actually in his kayak, saw what appeared to be a Dogman rising over a tree. And we actually went back and investigated the spot, and to try to get an idea how big this creature could have been. to rise above this particular area or this particular bush or tree that was there. And we estimated that it had to be at least, if not more than 3 meters tall. So he was actually stalked as he was in his kayak, and he heard the pounding of the ground. And he's one of those guys who has had a lot of dealings with horses, racing horses, breeding horses. So he knows what a horse sounds like when it's trotting and when it's moving through the land. And he says that this sounded heavier than what a horse would have sounded like. In that same area, we actually received another report of a young woman who was visiting her relative's place, and their place backs onto, or their property backs onto a national parks and a river. And she was out there looking for a dog, and she saw this massive creature that was standing in between the trees, sort of holding the trees, had a head like a mixture between a German Shepherd and a Doberman, and stood very, very high on its hind legs, and looking down on her. But up in Queensland, there had been a number of sightings of dogman type creatures. So, and I've actually had my own personal encounter as well when I was over in Europe. So yeah, they do get around by the sounds of it. How they got here is beyond me.
All right, let's get to another question. Let's go to Polly, who is asking, what ET species do you hear visit Australia the most? And what do you think? Why do you think that is?
Ultimately, we do have a lot of reports of greys and grey hybrids between humans and greys. These are some of the species that have been witnessed in Australia. There have also been insectoids as well, or claims of insect-type creatures that have been witnessed. In fact, if you go to there's a good friend of mine who runs the Believe in Paranormal UFO podcast. There's a report there earlier in one of the episodes where a lady in Australia actually had an encounter with an insect-type creature, and she passed out just after the encounter. So these are some of the creatures that have been sighted. We've also had reports of human luminous humanoid type creatures as well back in the 1950s, and slender black type humanoids as well, very tall, no features, just black, completely black. And these are some of the sort of reports or stories that we've actually heard in Australia. As to why we get these, I don't know. It's a good question. It's almost like, why do most people actually experience grey type creatures as opposed to others? It's a good question.
All right, we got 5 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Our guest tonight is Attila Kaldy, researcher, documentarian from Australia. Let's go to Ian in the UK. A little bit off from you, but do you think the Egyptians were in Australia, or was it hoaxed?
Well, no, they weren't in Australia, I can assure you, because the ancient Egyptians, especially the 4th dynasty Egyptians dating back to about 24 to 2500 BC, they did have boats, but a lot of those boats were obviously used on the Nile, funerary rituals, or used for funerary rituals and other transportation and fishing and so forth. They wouldn't have had vessels that would have been able to do large seafaring trips. In fact, I think you're probably referring to the Gosford glyphs. It's actually inscriptions. I've actually been there many years ago and looked at them. And there are actually also stick figures that have been carved in, and they do actually have references to the pharaoh Khufu, who lived in the 4th dynasty. It's believed that Khufu was responsible for building the Great Pyramid in Giza. But if you look at the facts, where, one is historical facts, and the second thing is carving into sandstone, which is an extremely porous material, over a matter of 50 to 100 years, those things will disappear anyway, because they are exposed to, to the elements, and water runoffs and sandstone will wear away. I actually did my own experiment, funny enough, up in the Blue Mountains on sandstone. I actually carved some inscriptions in there in a very private spot where nobody would actually see it. And I actually went back there about 5 to 6 years later, and they had worn away quite dramatically. So I'd give it another 5 to 6 years, and there won't be any visibility whatsoever. So yeah, these would have been carved in by guys who probably had some kind of cheat sheet with them and decided to have a bit of fun.
All right, let's go to Jose here. Attila, have you ever heard of the 1989 South African Kalahari UFO crash? They supposedly shot it down with an experimental laser cannon from a Mirage F1. Have you ever looked into that one?
Jose, look, I think it's a very good question, and I no, I haven't, but I'm keen to actually look into that, to that story, and see what information it can provide. But no, I haven't heard that one.
All right, moving on here. Let's go to Mel. Have there been any cattle mutilations reported?
Absolutely. There was a recent cattle mutilation case. And when I say recent, over the past 5 to 10 years, up in Queensland, and it's a case that I actually wouldn't mind looking into. I've been working with a friend of mine on some documentary films. One of it's called Dark Truths, Hills of Silence, which was our first documentary that we released. And that actually deals a lot on animal mutilations in country New South Wales. And you can see that on YouTube. So if you type in Dark Truths, Hills of Silence, we actually went to a place where there was a horde of animal mutilations there. That was more so, I think, cryptid type, but the one up in Queensland is something else, because the farmers had lost a number of cattle there. Not sure exactly what the count was, but they also did experience some unusual light phenomena on their property. So yeah, we do actually have cases. I dare say that 90, if not 95% of the cases aren't reported or made aware, or obviously made aware through mainstream media.
Great answer. Great answer. All right, let's move on to another one here. Let's next go to T-Bone again. Does the Bunyip come from indigenous lore?
Absolutely. There are some old scripts and texts from early explorers that actually mention the Bunyip. I'm trying to think of one in particular. It doesn't come to mind at the moment, but there was an explorer, I believe he started in South Australia and connected with some of the local indigenous folk there, and they spoke about the Bunyip and how to be careful not to go around the water holes, especially at nighttime. Kids were, asked to be accompanied by adults when they were to go to water holes to get water or go fishing or whatnot. So yeah, it is an indigenous law.
Do we have time for one more? I'll hold off on any more audience questions for right now. Are most of the sightings, 30-second answer, near water, or are they more inland in the continent?
It's a mixture, but we do seem to be getting quite a fair bit coming from the coastline. What you have to understand, Australia is mostly populated around the coastline. The further in you go, the more sparse the population is. So for all we know, things can be happening around Central Australia and we wouldn't even know about it.
Love that answer. All right, Attila Kaldy, we have him for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to take more audience questions. We might even shift gears looking into a little bit of the Yowie, because we can't have a show without a Yowie on here. That's for sure. This is Spaced Out Radio.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
Great show so far, my man.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for having me, mate. I'm happy to oblige anytime, buddy.
Oh, that's so much fun. Love it when you're on.
No, good stuff. Sharing this information in both ways I think it's very important so that we all understand what's happening, because I think there's a lot of relationship between what's happening over your end of the world and what's happening over here, because distances for some of the phenomena is really irrelevant.
I would agree.
Mm.
I would totally agree with that.
Especially if we're dealing with portal-based stuff.
Well, we'll get into some portals too next.
Interesting. Do you guys have a lot of that over there? Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Do you guys have a lot of that kind of stuff reported over there, portals and...
Yes and no. I would love to see it go a little bit more. That's for sure.
I do have an interesting story about that, which may have been a portal in a haunted hospital. If you want me to talk about that, it was quite.
We can get into that when we come back for sure.
Yeah, it was quite a remarkable encounter, actually. I think it's one of those things that really supported that whole sort of interdimensional or overlap sort of theory. So.
I think that's great.
Just looking at some of these questions are interesting, and comments.
Oh, yeah. Them's good peeps there. Les Paul Holland from Australia. How you doing? Strumming away on his Gibson's collection. He's got such a beautiful guitar collection. It's unbelievable. All right. Just trying to get caught up here.
No, you're right, mate. All good.
Green-eyed lady, how you doing? American culture, how you doing? So what are your plans for the weekend?
Editing. A lot of editing. Yeah. I want to get this documentary done by October if I can, and submit it to my distributor. So, yeah. We're also working, my wife and I are working on a book as well about our lives and experiences and our family, because our family has a series of, has a paranormal history on both ends. So sort of our journeys. So we're doing just a little podcast on the book only. So that'll just be based around the book itself and, just to promote it. But yeah, we're working on that too. So a few projects.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm heading into the forest tomorrow.
Good on you.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great.
What kind of gear, if you don't mind me asking, do you take with you apart from high-powered weaponry? What other things do you take?
Usually we end up taking some paranormal gear. And then we bring a couple cameras and intuition.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. I mean, ours is, I'll be honest with you, ours is, we're making it to look We want it to look amateur because we're not pros. We don't want it to look edited. We don't want it to look like a great package. You know what I'm saying? We just want it to try and be as natural as possible.
You know what? That's perfect, because most people, a lot of people, just want the raw stuff and to be able to experience it themselves. Yeah. You don't need to have a polished, production at all. As long as you've got a good story, mate, it doesn't matter who and what you shoot it with.
Right. Hold on right there. We're coming back in 5 seconds. Thank you, Blue and T-Bone, for the super chats. Here we go. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Glad you're here, because we love talking the weird and strange with you each and every night. Hey, we want to say to you, if you don't know already, our archives are always free by going to YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Final time tonight. Attila Kaldy is here, hanging out with us. We're going to get into some quick Yowie stories here, because you've also chased down this mythical legend, which people asking, what is a Yowie? Well, it would be the Australian version of Bigfoot. Is there a difference between the two, though?
Well, it's a good question. I don't believe there is. I think there's a lot of similarities between the American Bigfoot or Sasquatch and the Australian Yowie. The characteristics appear to be very similar. They appear to be similar in size. The behavioral trait seems to be very, very similar too. There have been some researchers that have suggested that the Yowie in Australia, or some species of the Yowies, may even be marsupials. So it's an interesting theory, but I mean, you just never know. We do live. Australia's a quite an interesting country with some very interesting creatures, present or past and present. But we also have the smaller Junjati or Wadagal creatures that about 3 foot tall, very human-like, very agile and nimble creatures that have been in Indigenous law for a very, very long time and have been cited fairly recently. So, or in current history, should I say. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of similarities. I don't think there's a great deal of difference, to be honest.
All right, moving on. I want to ask you then about this. Where are people seeing it? Because if Australia, like you said moments ago in the previous half hour, most of the population is on the outskirts, while the inland of the entire continent, which is massive, is pretty much desolate in many areas. Where are people having these encounters?
Well, interesting question, Dave, but mainly all over Australia, really. We do get there have been reports even from places coming from Central Australia, which is very rocky and very desert-like and very arid environments. But in a lot of cases, in places like that, there could potentially be underwater sources, underground water sources, underground caverns, where these life forms could be residing and living there. So they're obviously used to that type of environment. In fact, we do have one of our Indigenous friends. Her heritage comes from South Australia, and the Yowies around her area or her heritage area are very sort of short-furred and I guess more. They have very, very sort of strong skeletal features, especially facial features, similar to what Neanderthal would have been. So more towards the coastal areas where there's lush greenery and cooler weather, you'll get these Yowies with longer fur and more sort of pronounced and human-like form, or even a mixture between that and ape-type appearances and facial features. So yeah, there are differences, but most of the sightings again tend to sort of stem from areas where there's a larger population, where people tend to circulate a fair bit. Especially I do off-roading or camping in areas. One of the hotspots in our area used to be the Blue Mountains, but after the 2019-2020 fires, that has changed dramatically, and we've had massive rainfall. There's been tremendous landslides, and the actual landscape itself has changed and evolved as a result of that. So it's an evolving and ever-changing landscape now, where before it was reasonably stable, but since the fires, it's gone reasonably quiet in the mountains. So they're migratory creatures by the looks of it. Some researchers do believe that they do have a parameter, an area similar to what the great apes do, especially the gorillas. So yeah, it's hard to say at the moment, but like I said, that's where they're reported. But then again, in more isolated areas, such as North Queensland's heavy, dense forestry, most likely there'd be a large population there. But because there's very little human contact, we wouldn't know that.
Do you see these creatures as terrorizing ranchers and farmers?
Not particularly, no. I think there's a lot to be said about what human interaction towards the environment is actually causing, not on known species of animals, but also cryptids as well, such as Yowies and potentially even Dogmen. So we're encroaching more and more into the natural environment and taking away habitats and food sources from all sorts of animals and creatures, and we are destroying the environment as a result of that. So even if there is what appears to be an intimidating act from the Yowies or even from Dogmen, I mean, we know that Dogmen are very sort of unpredictable, probably the most unpredictable cryptid known to us. But focusing on the Yowies, if there is any kind of hostility or bluff charges, I think it has to do a lot with what we're doing with the environment. I mean, we just need to look back in our history, going back about 200 years when colonisation happened in Australia and what we did to the Indigenous population here. I mean, the Indigenous nations, some nations were migratory, so they had their summer camps and they had their winter camps. They knew exactly where to find food, and as soon as colonisation happened, it disrupted the whole ecosystem. So it changed everything. So I'm not surprised if there are types of hostile, interaction from Yowies. There was one particular one which was, again, that actually appeared in Tracking the Law, where up in North Queensland, a truck driver almost ran one over. They called him the Big Red because he's got red fur. And as this truck driver slammed on the brakes, this Yowie was actually coming down this embankment, and the Yowie would walk in front of the truck and actually slam both hands onto the bonnet, look at the driver into his eye, and obviously told him, "Watch where you're going, you're in my territory." And then he walked away. I mean, he could have made some damage, but he didn't. So I think we need to be a little bit more, intuitive when it comes to this kind of stuff. Why do some of these creatures do what they do? And look at the big picture rather than narrow it down to only being, a hostile act and, aggressive attack towards us.
All right. I'm curious, with these creatures, are they hard to find like they are here? Like footprints where you only find one track, not multiple tracks, and you might find one track and another track of the same footprint, say 40, 50, 100 feet away. Are they just as elusive there?
They are. They are. We've had tracks that we discovered over in the Marramara National Park, which is northern part, or a national park that's north of Sydney towards the Hawkesbury River region, and because that area is very lush and very wet. These tracks were actually, whatever it was very, very heavy, because it pushed the grass and any kind of debris that was on the ground down. So we were able to measure the actual length of the tracks, but we only had 2 or 3 one was reasonably very, very clear track. The other 2 were we really had to sort of dig hard to actually see them. So yeah, they're not sort of abundant. You really have to sort of look for it. I guess being in the right place at the right time says a lot.
Any updates on the thylacine? Have there been more sightings of this?
I don't personally keep a lot of track of the thylacine, especially the Tasmanian tiger, but I think we need to look at some of the reports going back historically, and there have been numerous sightings of the Tasmanian tiger in the Victorian area. So they are also on mainland. What we also have to remember is that mainland Australia and Tasmania were once connected before the ice age, or before the last ice age ended. So as the glaciers receded, the oceans obviously became, or started to grow, and they overlapped the strait between Tasmania and the mainland. So it obviously isolated a lot of the species that used to go back and forth. So yes, we do have we do have sightings here. In fact, even the Tasmanian devil was also used to live on mainland Australia, and I think they're looking at reintroducing the Tasmanian devil in certain parts of New South Wales. I don't know how that's going, because I haven't been sort of paying a lot of attention to that. But that was a program by the national parks, and I think some other form of environmental agency in Australia that they were working on. So there have been sightings, and even sightings of the marsupial tiger. There was a sighting up in Queensland, or a few sightings actually up in Queensland, which kind of raises the eyebrow and sort of, I mean, this thing was one of the fiercest predator, or the most fiercest predator that lived on Australian mainland. So it was actually known as Thylacoleo carnifex. So it was it was a very large and very aggressive predator. But some people have claimed to have actually seen something similar to that wandering in the deep jungles of the Queensland rainforest.
All right, let's get to some more audience questions here, and thank you for that update, by the way. Start off with Greg. Attila, do you still have contact with Damien Knott?
I've never really had contact with Damien. A good friend of mine, Don Mears, who did Australian Skies, he had contact with Damien, but no, I don't.
All right, moving on. Let's go to Raceman. What is your opinion on the Frederick Valentic disappearance?
The Valentic, yeah. Well, that was the Cessna that disappeared over Bass Strait. Look, I honestly believe that what Mr. Valentic actually encountered was a genuine UFO case. In fact, there were sightings in Tasmania, I think, the day before, if I remember correctly. I wasn't involved a lot with the Frederick case at all. Obviously not going back then, but even current times. I haven't done a lot of research in the Valentic case, but I know George Simpson, who is he's actually got a very sort of personal connection to that case. He has a wealth of knowledge, but personally, I believe that what Frederick actually encountered was, in fact, a genuine UFO.
So do another one. Let's go to Jules. What if they didn't need boats because they had portals? This opens up the next question of portals that I wanted to hit you up with.
So I'd like to know what they are. Are we talking about Yowies or aliens, or what?
Probably aliens.
it's a possibility. And we were talking off air about portals because there was one particular incident that I personally had an encounter with. And this was something that kind of underlines the theory of interdimensional convergence, if you like, between two different realities. There was this haunted location. It was an old hospital that we investigated back around 2007, and we were in one of the wards, and I had a boom mic sitting at the doorway, and we could actually hear this hustle and bustle of a hospital coming in waves. So it's quite interesting because it wasn't a continuous flow of sound like you would get if there were actual people in there, but this almost came in pulses, in long wave streams. So it would amplify a little bit, and then it would die down, and it would recycle itself over and over again. And you can hear almost like doctors talking to patients, cutlery, people walking. It sounded like a busy hospital, but this place was abandoned and had been not functioning as a hospital for a decade when we were there. So it's interesting that itself had kind of that sort of portal-like phenomena happening. We have actually seen dark, very, very dark patches in the sky, darker than the actual night itself, where lights would go in and disappear over in Mount White, which is near the Central Coast. But we've also noticed this at the recent investigation that we did in country New South Wales from that farmer, and we've actually seen something very similar to that there.
Let's go to T-Bone again. Can you talk about the disappearance of the Beaumont children?
Ooh, I don't think that's paranormal. I'd rather not, because
all right. Let's leave it. Let's leave it on topic. Yeah. Never mind. Let's go to J Truthseeker. Have you ever gone to investigate the underground Nordic location or Atlantean UFO base at Mount Dragon on the island of Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands?
No, I haven't. But interesting mention of the Solomon Islands, because that was always an area that I was interested in investigating. They've been even in World War II. Some of the Australian pilots had cases of reporting Foo Fighters around the Solomon Islands, near the Solomon Islands, and there've been a lot of interesting stories coming out of that area. And yeah, I have heard of the base, one of the mountains. I think it's an old volcano where inside the volcano itself exists some form of extraterrestrial base. Obviously a theory, but it would be an interesting expedition to check it out. But because of the unrest in that region, it's probably not a good idea yet to actually venture over there and to get lost into the jungles. It is quite a unforgivable terrain there.
Benno is asking, what's your knowledge of Mount Zile?
Not much.
No idea. Let's keep for our audience members on YouTube, let's keep the topics to UFOs or the Yowies tonight, if you don't mind. Let's go to portals here for a minute, because have you started chasing down where these alleged portals are?
Well, because they're so random, and they could potentially even be something that is a natural occurring phenomenon, but so rare. It's because of how random these things are. It's very, very difficult to be able to to place a target on a specific location and go there and wait. I think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time, to be honest. Although talking about portals, there's an interesting case that happened in the Blue Mountains where the people have actually have claimed to have slipped into a completely different time zone. And I'm not just talking about, going back 24 hours. I'm talking about going back into the 1940s and going back to a time where the geology was completely different. So there was a rock climber who had that experience where he tumbled. He was a rock climber that scaled the Blue Mountains and knew the Blue Mountains like the top of his hand. And the story was that he actually slipped and ended up in a spot where he looked up and he saw that the whole valley where he was climbing out of had completely changed, and the geology was so alien to him he didn't know where he was. So yeah, it's stuff like that have actually happened over the years.
Do you think then that a lot of these creatures or UFOs are coming in via portal into your area?
It's a possibility. I would not discard that whatsoever. And like I mentioned, the encounters that we had, or the recent investigation that we did in country New South Wales, we've noticed that there were darker areas in the sky where these light sources had vanished to. It wasn't prominent, it wasn't pronounced, but you were able to see it. If you looked hard enough and focused in that particular area, there was an area of the sky, a small area of the sky that was darker than the actual night sky itself. So one suggests that there potentially could be something going on there, potentially even a portal where these light sources are going in and out.
I wonder if areas that I've been have portals, because I don't think they're just used by UFOs. I think they're used by all sorts of weird, strange, supernatural creatures and figures in the area. Have you found that there are certain hotspots where things just seem to come in and out all the time?
Yes. Again, the mountains here, the Blue Mountains, is almost like an area on its own. It has its own mystery, and many unusual things tend to happen very quickly, but also vanish very, very quickly too. So I dare say that area, the Blue Mountains here, just outside of Sydney, may potentially hold secrets that are beyond our understanding, and not only from a ghost or haunting perspective, but also especially with aerial phenomena, with UFOs. And another example that I can give you was one where one of the ladies was going on a ghost tour at a location, a historical location, which backed onto a national park. And she lagged behind because she wanted to spend a bit of time on her own, sort of, tapping into the ambience of the environment. And then all of a sudden she saw this Yowie, this red-headed Yowie that was squatting. And it was so big that even though it was squatting, it was almost as tall as she was. And as she did a double take, looked away and looked back, and it had vanished. Now, whether or not it was something in and out of a portal, or whether she had seen a spirit of a Yowie who is still, I guess, policing the area there and feels that it's still connected to the land and is looking after the land. I don't know. It's a good question. My own question, which is stupid, but I mean, if we're looking at it from both ways, could it be one or could it be the other?
Let's go to another question here from our audience. Let's go to, as we got about a minute to go here, let's go to Pocket Watch. Do you know of any Stargates in Australia?
Well, I guess we are talking about something that creates a wormhole, whether it's a naturally occurring or artificially occurring wormhole that would take us to a different star system or take us to a different timeline. I guess that kind of sort of touches on the topic of portals, really, doesn't it? Look, apart from what I've described, there have been a number of other very similar sort of portal type incidences around Australia. But the ones that I've sort of had more knowledge of is the one I just basically spoke of.
Attila, we want to say thank you again for coming back on Spaced Out Radio. Another great show with you. Can't wait to do it again, my friend. Thank you very much. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller is going to join us as he will provide another spooky story. And then from there, the man we call Golden Bee, Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal, will join us for hour number 3. This is Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
Attila, my man, thank you very much for helping us out tonight.
Mate, my pleasure anytime, buddy. You have a good one. And, mate, you know what? Good luck with tomorrow. I hope it actually
Thank you.
yields some fruit for you, mate. So hopefully you'll
Appreciate
get something
you.
out of it.
Appreciate
All right,
you,
mate.
my man. You
No
take care,
worries.
okay?
You too, buddy. All the best. See you, mate.
See you again.
Bye.
Bye. Attila Kaldy, everybody. CS, how are you? I'll be right back. All right. Got about a minute to go. Let's bring in B. Arthur. There he is. The golden bee right there.
How you doing, Betty?
I am doing well, buddy. I am doing well.
Attila. Attila's a great guest.
What's that?
I love Attila. He's a great guy.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Glad to see you have him on. He's just one of those. He's so involved in the communities over there with his documentaries and stuff. Just an incredible guy.
Jaren's Carter says he loved you on the Golden Girls.
It's spreading, isn't it? It's just spreading, Dave.
It will be perfect when people in your chat room come in and say, "Hey, B. Arthur, how you doing?"
I will definitely owe you one for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, you will. Thank you to Blue Cruise and T-Bone for our super chats tonight. Greatly appreciated. Here we go with hour 3. Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway. My name is Dave Scott. We got Swamp Dweller and the Paranormal Portal's Brent Thomas coming on in here momentarily. But first, we want to say hello to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Belbutant. Belbutant is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp.
I'm a 22-year-old female, and this took place when I was around 12 or 13 years old. Before I get started, I want to say that first of all, I am not a good writer, so I hope it's not too much of a pain for you to read this. A friend of mine, I'll call her Mandy, who is also a female around the same age as me. We were hanging out around her apartment complex at the time, which is located next to a police station approximately 60 yards away from it. We were just grabbing a bite from a takeaway, which is also located around the area, when suddenly a man behind us started shouting at us. Mandy and I froze for a second and waited for the man to walk up to us, as we were way too scared to keep moving. The man told us that he had just been released from jail and was locked up for a night for being way too drunk and causing trouble. Great, I thought to myself. Mandy and I froze in shock and looked at each other for a moment, contemplating what we should do next, when suddenly the man came closer to us and threatened to hurt us if we tried to go away. It also looked like he had a knife or some sort of sharp weapon in his hand. I am not sure though, as I find it way too scary to properly look at the man. He then asked us for 50 cents, and we told him that we didn't have any money, which seemingly angered him more. I frantically checked all my pockets to find some spare change, and I actually ended up finding $5. I offered my money to the man in hopes of him finally leaving us alone, which he didn't. Of course, I remember thinking to myself, instead, he wanted us to go to the supermarket with him, which is across my friend's apartment complex on the other side of the street. Scared of the man hurting us, we followed him a little bit and thought about ways of losing him while crossing the street, which didn't work as he made sure to be closely next to us and watch our every move. So we actually ended up entering the store with him. When we went in, we tried to get the employees' attention. We were trying to get them to help us, but we weren't very successful. So we strolled around the store with the man closely watching us, then asked us if we knew where the alcohol section of the store is, which we actually did since it's kind of a secluded area on the left side of the store. We told him just that. He then proceeded to look around and didn't pay attention for a second. Mandy and I saw this as a chance to escape, so we booked it to the back of the store and luckily the supermarket's warehouse, which also has an extra exit for delivery, which was wide open. It usually never is, and I haven't seen it opened ever since. We ran in there, with employees actually shouting at us to come back since we're not allowed back there. Thanks for nothing, by the way, but we didn't care. We kept running all the way through the exit and around the corner, where we proceeded to cross the street back to where my friend's apartment was at. We ran for the door and shut it as fast as we could. When we were inside the house, we walked up the stairs into her apartment and tried to catch our breaths as best as we could and try to understand what had just happened. I'm not sure if we ever actually told her mom, and I know for sure we didn't go to the police station down the street as we were way too scared of crossing the man again or getting in trouble. I know, kind of a dumb mindset. I am aware that this story is not as creepy as many of the other stories shared on the show, but to us in this situation at the time, it felt like we were going to get hurt or lose our lives if we didn't find a way to lose this guy. My friend still lives there actually, and I don't remember having seen this dude ever since. But I sure hope it stays that way.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, head on over to Swamp Dweller. Hit subscribe. Ring that bell on YouTube. He'd appreciate it. You got thousands of stories for free right there. Now, filling in for Lee Strauss, the extra small one, out on a camping trip here from the Paranormal Portal. It's Brent Thomas. Brent Thomas, otherwise known as the Golden Bee around the podcast parts. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you, brother?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. Getting ready for another week of adventures here, and I'm telling you, my man, it is golden to be here, to be sharing airwaves with the sultry, dulcet tones of yourself.
Well, I'm absolutely honored always to be here, and I love hanging out with you, so this is really perfect. I'm always available for you.
I want to just, have some fun with our audience. So if you're on YouTube, I know our radio audience can't do this, but if you're on YouTube, type in some questions for Brent and myself. We're going to take some audience questions this hour. Brent, I got to tell you, I love your show, The Paranormal Portal, and I think that everybody should go and hit subscribe to it if they haven't already on YouTube. Out of the years you have been doing this, what is the scariest story you have ever heard?
Oof, man, honestly, one that's extra scary to me because it involved my cousin and I was directly involved in it, trying to help him through this. And he'd been on my podcast several times, and we've done interviews about his varied experiences. He had a pretty haunted life. But what it was is he and his wife at that time had bought a property, and they hand built a big log home on it. Beautiful log home. And it was wonderful. And it was in this wooded area of near Flint, Michigan, in a town called Lapeer. And he built this beautiful log, and everything was fine and everything was perfect and dandy. But he always said there was this one part of the property he always had a weird feeling on, but never really thought about it. But they didn't build their log there, so he wasn't really concerned with it. It was just a overgrown part of his lot. And suddenly, and I don't know what the trigger was. He said it started one night. He said he was laying in bed, sound asleep, and woke up to a start, just like that. Woke wide awake. Like, what the hell's going on? And suddenly on the floor above him, which was a loft where there was a TV where he'd go up and watch TV with his kids and stuff, suddenly he heard something drop on the floor that was hard. And then he heard it rolling in circles on the floor above him, just around and around and around. And there's hardwood floors everywhere. And of course it's wood floor. So he can hear it. He's sitting there, and he's a very light sleeper anyway. And he said it went around and around and around and around. And then he finally was like, what is going on? So he got out of bed, went out down the hallway from his room, and then up to the loft stairs and looked around, and there was nothing going on. But on the floor, he found a single marble. He's like,
Oh, wow.
I don't know where that came from. But this was the start of what would turn into about a solid month of activity, literally from hell. I mean, it was just everything went wrong. He said they had so many different experiences, but his experience was he was afraid to go to bed because 3 o'clock would hit and boom, he would be woken up and it would be another night. And this went on for 30 days. One night he woke up and he heard this loud screaming from down in his basement, like a woman's shrieking scream. And then this noise of things crashing in his basement. Well, he was a firearms dealer and he had a vault in his basement. And he said he didn't know what it was, looked around, didn't see anything, but he said it was a day later. He went into his vault, which had like a real like bank safe door on it, opened it up, and all of his firearms were torn from the wall on these screw mounts and piled in the middle of the room. And he's like, oh my God. And you imagine the force that would require. So that happened, and he has no explanation for it because it's literally a vault. It was reinforced concrete walls, a bank vault kind of door. It was just, nobody could have been in there and did this. And so that happened. Then another night he woke up. Actually, his wife, who had never experienced any of this stuff, woke up and was absolutely terrified because she had gone out to go to the restroom and noticed this wall of fog that filled up their entire living room and kitchen area, just a wall of it. And she woke him up and he came out and he said, as they stood there, this fog just kind of dissipated and faded across the room like a wall until it was finally gone. And then he said he has this big bull mastiff. And he said, suddenly it was acting all weird and kind of twitchy. And this dog never barked, never did anything aggressive, but it just started snarling and ran headfirst into the wall, like wham.
Oh my.
Yeah. And it was like these events were crazy. He had things being thrown around his house. And it was literally like a Hollywood movie. And every day he would call me. And I was in Minnesota at the time. He's in Michigan. But I tried to walk him through this, and this is long before I had a show, but I was always into this stuff. So we talked, and I talked to him about some cleansing ideas and things that they could do. And it just went on and on and on and on. And his little daughter saw an old grandma out on the porch. They had a covered porch outside of their door. And she saw an old grandma looking in the window, looking around like that, and then just disappear. And she was about 3 or 4 at the time. I'm sorry if I'm getting lag.
No, just keep rolling. You sounded great.
Okay, good. But this went on and on and on and on. And then finally, he said one day he went to bed after 30 days of this, like seriously, like a month. He went to bed and he was totally expecting to wake up again at 3 o'clock every morning. And he woke up and the birds were chirping and the sun was out. And it was like he knew that it was over. And sure enough, it was over, whatever this was. But it was so intense and so profound and so powerful that every night for 30 days, he had something just blowing up around his house, figure of speech, but you know what I mean?
Did it just finally stop?
Just stopped. He said one thing that he did do was towards the end, he was furious because one time he was in his daughter was having trouble sleeping. So he went in there and sat with her in her room, which was just adjacent to his room. He sat in there and suddenly he had this bad feeling and looked towards the window and something slammed into the side of his house coming from that weird area of the lot that he didn't like. So he said the next day he was just like, screw it. He got out his gear, his eye protection and his chainsaw. And he went and hacked everything down in that whole area. He was just so sure that there was something to do with this area. And then it was right after that suddenly he woke up and the birds were chirping and everything was over. So maybe there was something about this area.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a hitchhiker got stuck in the house or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think it was probably something to do with the land, because I always, even though there had never been a structure on there that they knew of, maybe historically way back when, but whatever, people have this idea that hauntings have to, well, there's got to be history. There's got to be some tragedy. There's got to, it's got to be hundreds of years old, or something horrible happened, or lots of deaths in the family, that kind of thing. But a lot of times these hauntings are brand new homes. And I think that in those cases, like you said, it could be just something wanders through and like, hey, I like your house, I'm going to stick around a while. Or it could be that the land remembers. There's something attached to the actual land. So it's anybody's guess.
I would say for me, one of the scariest stories I ever heard came from Merle. Okay. And Merle from the Paranormal Road Trippers, you hear him on this show once a month, talking all things ghostly. He was almost killed by a ghost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So about 2 hours north of where SOR headquarters is, there's a museum in this town called Quesnel, British Columbia. Mm-hmm. And inside a curio cabinet in the museum is a doll called Mandy, who is thought to be one of the most haunted dolls in the world. Oh. Okay, in 10 most haunted dolls in the world. And Mandy, one day, it was said that you don't stare into Mandy's eyes. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, she will hypnotize you and make you do things you don't want to. So they're getting ready for their investigation that night, and Merle decides that he is going to go and grab something to eat out of his vehicle. He has a little routine that he does. So he walks out of his vehicle and he doesn't remember anything after that. It wasn't until a few minutes later when he woke up, he was about 10 feet from the highway. He was going to walk right into the middle of the highway. Oh. And he was caught by one of his teammates who's like, "What are you doing out here?" And immediately he started convulsing and feeling sick and all of this. Like, he was possessed because he made eye contact with Mandy a little bit too long.
Oh my God.
That's when things get real, man.
Yeah.
That's when things get real. Let's go to an audience question here.
Sure.
Philip in the UK, good morning to you. What possible cryptids are there who may migrate between North Idaho and the Caribou Plateau of British Columbia? Oh, I would say Bigfoot, Dogman. I don't know about little people, but definitely those two, eh?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that, I don't know if they migrate or if they just have really broad ranges. I've often thought that whatever Bigfoot are, they obviously need a lot of calories, so they would probably have a range much like a grizzly bear, which can be several hundred miles squared. So yeah, if they do migrate, for sure, I could see them coming and going or moving between areas like that very easily. I don't really know that much about Dogman. And I gotta tell you, Dave, I'm not always sure Dogman is a physical thing, or is it something in between, or something else, or because I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, by the way?
I know there are dogmen in my area.
Yes.
I have not seen them near my investigation sites. I've only heard of them being on the east side of the highway that takes you up to Alaska. Mm-hmm. I investigate on the west side. Now, it's not like they can't cross the road,
sure,
and come into those areas, but I really haven't seen any proof of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of wolf packs, but I'm sure, and I've seen some big wolf tracks, but I'm pretty sure that if all of a sudden I saw, say, a wolf track that's walking in a track bipedally, that would be a little bit hairy, as well as maybe double the size of a wolf track.
Right. Yeah.
Then I might get a little worried. But as of right now, I'm not too concerned about it. Are they out there? Probably. I know one of the indigenous elders from up here who was telling me a couple years ago that he and his brother were out and they wanted to hunt for a bear. So they were up on what we call the 500 road, which is a logging road up here. And they were driving along and they came to this meadow where his brother saw two, what he thought were bears standing up, looking at them. He puts his rifle down and lines up one of these bears with his scope, and then drops his rifle, not drops it on the ground, but kind of lowers his rifle, says, "We need to get out of here." He goes, "Those aren't bears."
Oof.
And they were two dogmen standing together. Now, I don't know the vicinity of where that happened. I know the road that happened, and I'm scared to go up that road because of it. I just do not want to deal with dogmen. And yet I know that it's there. Like, I wonder if a couple weeks ago, if Dogman was what was calling us, trying to lure us into the forest.
Yeah.
For Tim and I don't know. Was it him? Was it a Wendigo? Was it a skinwalker? Was it ghosts or something freaky paranormal? I don't know. I'm glad we didn't go. I may not be here to be doing the show.
Yeah. You know, it's funny the amount of mimicry that goes on, and you're right. It can be cryptozoological, it could be spiritual, it could be a lot of different things. It could be extraterrestrial for all we know. I mean, it could be all of the above. But I was having a talk with Linda Godfrey, and she was telling me a story that she lived in Kettle Moraine area of Wisconsin. And they call it Kettle Moraine because there's like these, the ground drops off, and then there's these kettle forests that kind of exist below them. But there was lots of Bigfoot activity in her area. And she was telling me that one of her neighbors, and I've told this on my show a bunch of times, so sorry if it's redundant to some of you, but one of her neighbors would always in the warm months go out on her patio and answer her phone. And the way she answered her phone was always, "Oh, hello, hello, hello." Yeah, that was the way that she answered a phone. And she would hear that all the time. Well, she said one time it was a quiet early morning, and Linda was out on her patio near the kettle drop off down into the forest below. And from below her in the forest, she heard, "Oh, hello, hello, hello." and it was like a mimic that it picked up this sound. And how many stories have you heard, Dave, where people that have dogs, and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, hey, Tucker, my dog, come here." And suddenly there'll be this other voice in the forest calling their dog to them. It's like, ooh, but a really deep, huskier voice. So I find that fascinating.
I'm telling you, that to this day is probably, I mean, like, I've had encounters with UFOs and stuff like that. And, I believe I have been taken, but I don't know. It's at night.
Sure.
Yeah. Have I regressed? Yeah. Have I got memories of things happening? Yeah. That's not as scary as when you're actually wide awake. And those voices, man, I hope I never hear those again.
That's gotta be it. Like turn your blood to ice water, huh?
Oh, dude, you have no idea.
No, I don't.
No idea. Maybe you do. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but
no, I never have.
It is completely creepy when that happens. And I hope in our next investigations that we do, which will be filmed on YouTube and put on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
I hope it never happens, man. I really hope it never happens again. But with that location, it wouldn't surprise me. Brent, hold on right there. We're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Brent B. Arthur Thomas from the Paranormal Portal podcast on YouTube. Make sure you check it on out. He'll be with us for the next half hour. Spaced Out Radio.
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, those voices are weird. The one video you had up, I've listened to where the one where like the children's voices are happening.
Yeah.
That is so creepy. So
There's a new one in episode 5, Voices in the Woods.
Yeah. I gotta watch
when I am talking to Tim when he's in the Estes method, there is a point where we hear, "We're firefighters, dummy."
Wow.
Comes across my microphone. "We're firefighters, dummy."
Wow.
Yeah.
I think this has got to be like a, I mean, from the outside looking in, but it sounds like there's just a lot of phenomena there. Like it's a vortex kind of site.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's tomorrow night. We're going to do something interesting. We're actually going to try a little bit of an experiment. And what we are going to be doing is having Lon Strickler. We're going to call him before we go in.
Mm-hmm.
And then we lose cell phone service very quickly. And then we drive about an hour or about 45 minutes to get there. And with no cell phone service.
Okay.
We're usually there between 2.5 and 3.5 hours. And then when we get out of the forest and back into cell phone service, we're going to contact Lon again to see if his remote viewing coincides with what happened up there tomorrow.
Wow. That'll be a cool experiment.
Yeah. We're going to try it out.
That's exciting. I can't wait to hear how that goes. Huh. I got to give you credit, though. I mean, because with as much really terrifying stuff has happened up there, the fact that you still go up there.
I'm addicted.
I guess.
I'm addicted. No, I don't have a satellite phone, but the area where we are, it does. If I needed to call 911, it would dial 911.
Okay. So you do have
emergency. It's the SOS on your phone.
Yep.
It automatically hooks to satellite, I guess.
Yeah, it happens up here too when I'm driving around either Idaho or Montana. It goes into SOS a lot.
Yeah. Moody Mongol wants to play with my beard so bad. I don't blame you, Moody.
But you get to. He doesn't.
Which reminds me, I got to set an appointment for Wednesday. Yeah. Good part about it is my barber books online.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Like 6-7 months ago, this guy was, he's also a preacher as well. And he was struggling just to make ends meet.
Uh-huh.
And he was sitting in my daytime office one day. He's like, I'm thinking about opening up a barbershop. I said, guy, do it. Just do it. Getting into him now 6 months later is difficult.
Wow.
It's difficult to try. Like his shop just took off. And he only cuts men's hair. But he is incredible.
Wow.
He is absolutely incredible. Let's see. We need the funny part about it is he, at my request, he did one thing. He started the kids, what he calls the kids faux shave.
Okay.
So he'll do like a full, shave without the razor blades. And this is now taking off with the kids too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat. My dad used to be a barber as well.
Love it.
Yeah. So he always used to threaten us with high knees if we weren't good. And I didn't really know what a high knee was, but it was basically like,
Yeah. Hold right there, buddy.
very good.
We're going to come back here in a second. Here comes the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us as we continue on with our special guest, Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal, filling in for extra small Lee Strauss here on the Q&A. Before we get back to Brent, want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you know our archives are always free. You can download them on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We call him B around here because his voice is golden. Brent Thomas is here from the Paranormal Portal, hanging on out with us, talking about weird and strange. Brent, welcome back.
Hey, good to be here, brother. I'm having a blast. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're always glad to have you here. Out of all the people you have interviewed, because we heard your scariest story, all right? Out of all the people you have interviewed, what's one that really caught you off guard?
It would have to be the one that I was always hoping to find and finally found was a person that had experienced a vampire, like a real vampire. And that one blew me away. And I think I might have covered this on your show before, but it still stands as one of the most impressive ones because they're so incredibly rare where somebody will run into something like a real vampire. And that one really took me off guard because I had tried to find the information of real encounters. And I'd seen some television shows talk about people, you know, possibly in New Orleans encountering real vampires and stuff. I'm like, God, I wish I could find somebody like that. And then the person found me and he emailed me and it was funny because he never identified. He's like, I'm not going to try to define what happened to me. I'll just tell you the story. And I'm curious what you think I experienced. And he went into the story and it was basically him as a 4-year-old in his, parents' house with his mom. His dad was off at work or whatever, but they lived in this kind of a trailer house, a single wide trailer house. And he always used to love to, as a 4-year-old, sit on the sink counter area next to a window and play with his mom while she was doing stuff coming and going. And he was sitting there and there was about 80 yards of grass and then woods. And he said he never, ever saw anybody there out in that field ever, but he'd sit up there and just do his thing and kind of look out the window. And then he said one day he saw this person on the wood line and he was like, well, there's somebody there. He's like, Mom, there's someone out in the yard. And, you know, yelled to her. She was in a different part of the house. And he said that he looked over in the direction she was in another part of the trailer. And then he looked back and the guy had just moved in that short time to the window. Like was already at the window. And he said he looked like a heavy African-American guy, except his skin was like purple and he looked kind of bloated. And he said his eyes were kind of glowing lightly a red color. And he said he looked like he was starving as he looked through the window. And he was actually like trembling, looking at this little boy sitting on the other side of the window pane. Like he was trembling, like he wanted to get to him so bad. He was just shaking and dialed in. And the kid said, well, the guy said that, you know, I should have been terrified as a 4-year-old, but he said, I felt really calm and realized I was reaching for the window to open it. And then he said, I didn't know. And then he said, he freaked out and said, Mom, come here now. And she kind of came. And as she rounded the corner, he looked back and it was already like, you know, all the way back over by a fence line, which is a little to the left, and was jumping over it. And he said it moved so fast it had streamers. It was like light streamed. It was moving so quickly. It was like there was light trails And that was an encounter. And he had another encounter as an adult with seeing something when he left a venue of another one of these, not the same one, but he thinks it was the same thing. And I think he saw a vampire. And he said that, the weird thing is he was always worried that he was somehow tagged and now they could find him whenever he wanted. And that's why he saw a second one. But he said he came out of this venue and there was this guy there. He's kind of slim, and he looked away quick and looked back, and the guy was now up on top of like a gazebo, standing on the roof looking down on him. And it was really two fascinating encounters. But I never thought I would actually have the opportunity to talk to somebody that had seen something like that.
Man, I've never met anybody who has seen a vampire before. It's one of those thrilling things, because we've talked vampires a number of times on this show with Varla Ventura and Lon Strickler and Butch Witkowski, the late Butch, which is absolutely a terrifying subject.
Yeah.
But I always think of the vampires, I always ask, are there real vampires still around? Not the ones who have are identifying as vampires.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm saying real vampires that turn into bats and fly away, and never heard of that.
Yeah.
I mean, one subject that totally intrigues me, and it would tie to vampires as well. I would love to meet an immortal.
Ooh.
I do believe, and maybe it's because of I loved the Highlander coming up, growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
But I would love to meet an immortal or chat with an immortal and have them prove. I don't even care if I need proof, because anybody could sit there and say, "Oh, I'm immortal." Really?
Yeah.
Really? You're no, you're not.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that think there are a lot of things out there so I'm sure there's plenty of people that will tell you all day long they're immortals, but how would you know? I mean, you if you don't have proof, how could you know that they're being
Well, I guess they would have to tell you some pretty amazing feats. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Not that I'm a believable guy, but I also know BS when I see it or hear it. So I think it would be, pretty amazing to actually see. And I'm sure an immortal could maybe prove to you somehow without having to, take you through the Highlander type thing where they got to show you chopping off somebody's head.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder what that would be. I do agree. I mean, I guess through the journey of doing all this stuff, I really had to come to terms with, look, anything is possible. Anything and everything is possible. Like when I started, I really thought I knew what this stuff was, and I knew and understood it, I thought. But then you start hearing these stories and you start going down the rabbit holes, and you realize everything is possible. Everything. So I don't see why you couldn't eventually meet an immortal. I'm sure there are some out there, or one or two. I don't know, maybe only one or two. But if you're out there, immortals, get in touch with Dave, and then Dave, tell me about it, please.
Right.
Would you tell people if you met one? Would you let people know?
If I was immortal, or if I met an immortal?
If you met one, would you come on your show and say,
with their permission?
Okay.
With their permission, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I could tell you on the flip side of that, let's say Tim and I are investigating Flight 21, and we have the ultimate Sasquatch encounter, I may struggle releasing that.
Yes.
Right. I may struggle to do that because, and I'll tell you why. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Sure.
If you release it, you are about to be absolutely castigated by half of this community, if not more.
Yeah.
If you had that next
Yep.
Patterson Gimlin film,
And also, I
wouldn't-
think if that was the case, then everybody and their brother would be going out trying to see it too, that listens to your show. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of I have this idea that I really hope, I mean, I would, obviously I believe they're out there. I've had an experience, I think, that I was in close proximity to one and got growled at, but I almost don't know if it would be a good thing if they were substantiated, because I think we have a tendency to destroy what we love. And then if word ever got out there that yes, indeed, there's absolutely Bigfoot out there, then it would be the newest reality show for people, and everybody be loading up into their family truckster and heading out to the forest to see a Bigfoot. Kids, come on, let's go. Like, you know, like they go to Yellowstone and try to pet buffalo, except it would be Bigfoot. And I think if that they're out there, and they're probably hanging on by a thread in some ways now, because the world has changed so much, and we keep pushing outward, and we keep changing, you know, everything, including probably ancestral pathways and their cycles and you know, their circuits, so to speak, throughout the year. And so they've been forced. And I just think we'd end up destroying them somehow, and with our love of them.
I agree. But I still don't think that I would, and this is a great debate in the community. If you were able to capture that next Patterson Gimlin Sasquatch film,
Mm-hmm.
would you release it? I don't think I would.
Yeah.
You are literally setting up your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren for a life of turmoil.
Yeah. Yeah. Having sat down with Bob Gimlin and talked with him and just heard his story. I mean, the one thing he said is, I wish Roger was still here. I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, because it would have been nice that he could have handled some of this too, because Bob's journey has not been a good one as far as the kind of abuse he took and all that.
And not just that, but people who used that film and him to profit for themselves.
Yes.
Well, he got nothing.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah.
Right.
He got a lot of bad. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is to me, that is the most committed video out there, that one is real.
Absolutely. Me too. And if you think about it, all the abuse he's taken through the years, the death threats, the harassment his wife and family have taken, it would have been real easy for him to go, you know what, guys, it's not real. But he stood by it.
I believe he did at one point. He kind of snarkily said to somebody, no, it's not real. We made it up. And that's where all the critics came out and said that he's already admitted that it wasn't real. You know, I mean, this is a guy, remember, this is going back to a day where, you know, you could get anybody's phone line by calling the operator.
Oh, right.
And he was getting death threats
over
a Bigfoot video. Think about that. Getting death threats over a Bigfoot video.
Yeah, it's insanity.
And those death threats continued. I mean, people give him slack now because he's, I believe, in his late 80s, early 90s.
90s, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people give him slack now, but, you know, up until he was in the 70s, you know, in his 70s, he was still getting harassed big time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want that.
No.
I wouldn't want that. I mean, the way social media is today, here's the thing. You're not going to make, unless you release it on YouTube, okay, where you're going to get 1 million, 2 million plus views on it, probably 200 million views.
Mm-hmm.
You'll make money that way. But in reality, you're not going to make money off of this. It would be very rare for that to happen.
Yeah.
And then
go ahead.
And then with AI now coming in,
Oh,
and getting better and better every day.
yeah.
Who's going to say?
I think probably the next Patterson Gimlin film will probably come from a dash cam as they get more prolific, because the road crossings are some of the most common sightings people have. So maybe a dash cam will get one.
But we've had good films.
Sure. And there's
I would say out there, somebody has that film. Somebody has that Patterson Gimlin film, or type film, I should say, that they are holding on to for dear life because they don't want the online harassment.
Yes. I will tell you personally, I have seen some images that were captured that I can't debunk, and they look really, really good, but the people have no interest in sharing them publicly. And you can't really blame them, because like you said, you're entering the gauntlet as soon as you put it out there, and you're going to get hammered.
Going back about 8 years ago, the crypto guru Ronald Murphy and I had a guy reach out to us, and I got Ron involved with this. So a guy reached out to me from Manitoba, and this guy had incredible photographs of a fairy, fairies in his yards. And we're not talking just little orbs of light, dude. We are talking actual fairies, wings, body, everything, including a dead one.
Oh, wow.
And this guy said, I've got these are in my yard. The guru and I were planning on traveling there to actually see these firsthand to confirm. And we said to him point blank, keep it quiet until we can get everything set up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It'll be all yours. We're not asking for a thing. We'll even sign a piece of paper that says we want nothing from this, except maybe an interview. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy didn't take our advice. He went to a bunch of Facebook groups and a bunch of other podcasters, including some that were highly skeptical.
Oh.
And they burned him so bad that he left the field.
Oh, no.
And we could have had, professional photographers, people who analyze photographs and videos and everything. We were lining that all up for them because they looked really believable. They didn't look like they were photoshopped. They didn't look like they had been, 8 years ago, we didn't even really know what AI was.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And we were screwed. We were absolutely screwed on that. And now can't even get a hold of the guy.
He won't return calls, huh?
Will not return any calls. So you just forget about him and move on.
Yeah.
But I will guarantee you there's that footage. There's footage of all the weird stuff, of stairways in the forest, of UFOs and alien encounters. I'm sure it's out there. But due to fear of public scrutiny, it's not being released.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. And you can't blame them. I've seen some stuff released that was, I wasn't totally on board, but I saw the abuse that those people took and how horrible people were to them. And it's like, at least they're trying to put something out there, and why people are so adamant and hurtful, just for any number of reasons, but it is really cutthroat. It's tragic.
Well, example of that, in our chat room for one of our shows, all of a sudden this guy, never been in my chat room before, starts calling my guest a liar. You're a liar. Stop making things up. Never seen the guy before. And I'm basically saying, guy, just calm down. You don't have to believe, but don't insult the guest.
Yeah.
Right? Don't insult the guest. Have some couth. This guy's lying. How can you be buying this? How do you buy this crap? And look, some people just feel that they have to be that guy. They think they're bringing a dose of reality into a bunch of people who just, have a brain IQ of combined 120. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's tragic, but I think that the bigger peculiarity is, why is someone that thinks like that watching a show about stuff like this? And it's like, well, you arrogant prick,
Well, I look at it too like this. When you get people who are doing that, the one thing that I hate about our community is, and in social media society in general, is we've popularized these very painful terms without understanding the meaning. Whether you call somebody a Nazi, or whether you call somebody, a socialist, or whether you call them a communist, or whether you call them a liar or something along those lines. I think the majority of people who are using those terms in today's society really don't understand the true meaning of those words, and really haven't studied history very well, especially liar. I hate that word, liar or lying. Yeah. I really, really do. I can't stand that word. But what do? It's just people. They're going to be the way they are. We're going to have our critics. Why are we going to have our critics, Brent? Because we talk about the weird stuff, man. We talk about the weird stuff that everybody hates to admit they love, but they love it anyways. We are the cryptid porn here on Spaced Out Radio. Right there. Brent, I want to say a big thank you for you filling on in for Extra Small Lee Strauss night. Tell everybody where they can find your show.
Probably the best place to find information about my shows is to go to paranormalportal.net, and that will let you know about where the YouTube is, all the links to social media, and the podcast.
Beautiful. As we say goodnight to Brent, and hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your car, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. That's good times right there, man. Good times.
Yeah, it was fun.
What do we do now?
I was just being quiet because I didn't know if you were all done with the.
We're done.
Oh, okay. Well, now we
give us your best Paul Harvey. And now you know the rest of the story.
I only do Homer.
What's the date today? The 10th?
It is.
Oh, yeah. July 10, 25.
No, 11. It's 11th, right?
Well, it's still the 10th.
Well, I think it's almost the 12th, but it's.
Oh, BG's from Australia. Where have you been hiding? Have you been staying alive? Staying alive? Joe wants to know what it was like to work with Betty White.
Well, Betty's a rare talent, and I feel honored to share the stage with her. So it's always an honor. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, yes.
What happened to TFR? It just kind of went defunct. They didn't continue it after a while, so yeah, just kind of went the way of the dinosaurs. That's where I got my start, though.
Give me 2 seconds here.
Yeah, do whatever you got to do, brother.
Films.
I'll just juggle for the audience. Questions, not actual objects. Truth Frequency Radio was TFR. It was a network online. That's where my show started in 2016.
Oh, Greg frickin' Maloney. What are you doing there, Greg frickin' Maloney? Thanks, buddy.
I only need to eat half.
I always got to translate back to Canadian dollars.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Wow.
There you go. That's a lot of love right there, brother.
Thank you, buddy.
Ooh. See what you get for wearing a good shirt, Dave?
Right?
How about
I
my
want
shirt?
you to know when.
How about my shirt, Greg? Just saying.
Yeah, but you don't have the beard to
I can't grow a beard. I wasn't given enough.
Dude, I
thought.
have some beards here. I can send you one. You can paste it on.
Yeah, but I can't, because those are actually other people's hair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll just stick my own, Dave. Thanks. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Nicole's trying to be funny.
What'd she say? What did the alien say to the gardener? I don't know.
Just for the record, people, 1,000 Thai baht equals $42.17 Canadian. So thank you very much, my friend.
That's really cool. Thailand.
Take me to
very
your weeder. Really? Nicole, you're too good looking for dad jokes. That's a dad who wears socks and sandals type joke.
Thailand's a beautiful country. That's really cool. Greg over in Thailand. Mrs. Portal's from Indonesia, so in the neighborhood. Beers rule. Paul Deman says beers rule, Dave. Or Paul Deman.
There we go.
Moody Mongol says we need more Loud Dave shirts for sale in the SOR.
I wish I could find some of these to sell, but got to go online for those. My store doesn't have them.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that is cool.
Dave's profile looks like Socrates. Yes, I know it's Socrates, but nobody's called him Socrates since Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Party on, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Good old Socrates Johnson.
That was kind of a classic. Did you watch that reboot that they did more recently?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
I didn't either. I was curious.
I want to. I am looking forward to Happy Gilmore too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was glad to see they're going to dust that off and redo something.
It really sucks that Bob Barker's not going to be in it though.
Yeah. What was it, about 80 when that show came out back then? And
he did all of his own stunts too, eh?
I believe it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I was in
Did
great
you ever
shape.
did you ever see the part 2 of the fight when Bob Barker's in the hospital
No.
and Adam Sandler comes to visit him? Oh my God. That you have to YouTube that.
Okay.
If you need a good laugh, YouTube that. Yeah, Happy Gilmore 2 coming out very soon.
Yep.
Him and Shooter are going to get it going again.
Shooter. Oh, is that guy going to be in it?
Shooter McGavin. Imagine that actor. Nobody knows his name. They only call him Shooter McGavin. He's literally made millions away from the screen just by that character.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, dude.
I can believe it. Probably showing up at conferences and stuff.
Step Brothers 2 would be amazing.
That would be good.
John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell are magic together.
Yeah.
Sam, I also need another Talladega Nights with the shake and bake.
Will Ferrell hasn't been doing much lately, though, as far as I can tell.
I know.
He was in everything for a while. It was like everything funny. It was like, oh, Will Ferrell.
Same as Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
He was in everything too.
Yeah.
And Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yep. Last thing I saw.
Now everything's Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
The Ryans from Vancouver. Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, are they both?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Both from Vancouver. Yeah, dude, go do yourself a favor and watch that. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Did you see that? That just happened. I don't even know what I'm doing here.
I don't know
what I'm doing.
I'm getting these, I'm getting these lag spikes from StreamYard. I don't know why. I did everything I could to stop them, but still get them.
I hear you. It happens, man.
Yeah.
It happens.
Damn internets.
Cranky internet. Oh man, I called up GoDaddy right before the show because if anybody uses I've used GoDaddy email since I started SOR.
Oh, okay.
And a few years ago they switched over to Microsoft running their email.
Oh yeah.
And now they've implemented this Microsoft 365 program.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, just being straight up blunt, this thing is fucking terrible. It is.
Is it really? Oh no.
Oh my God. And so I called them up and I said, or maybe it's the 11th today.
Yeah.
I think it was the 10th.
No, it's now the 12th.
Oh man. Well, I better change that date.
Yeah.
What is my hold on. Yeah. So I called the guy up and I said, look, I know this isn't your fault, but you realize that you're having to take the brunt of the punishment from angry people like me who are being an asshole right now because you forced a product on it and jacked up your payments on a product that we don't want or need.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, I'm listening to you. I'm like, I know you're listening to me and I know you're agreeing with me.
Yeah. Forced upgrades suck.
Right.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Microsoft and Facebook are famous for that. If it isn't broken, fix it anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to be looking into Google to see how much Google charges to move a company business over there
to their
email server.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just do mine through Gmail. I always have. It's nice because it comes with 15 gigs of, file. You can, have file storage and stuff. But I'm sure they must have some professional thing too that I don't use.
I just find Google stuff so much easier to use.
Yeah.
Well, Microsoft, I mean, you literally have to have a master's in computer sciences in order to figure out what the hell they're doing next.
Yeah. And then they want subscriptions for everything too. So it's like, ugh, you don't ever actually own anything. You just rent it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to cut this up tomorrow, but since I'm here.
Might as well slice and dice.
Since the bee is here.
Since I'm here, let's just do some cutting. That sounds wrong, doesn't it?
Let's cut it up. Cut it up.
It sounds a little wrong. Sorry about that, Dave.
Oh, no problem. That's what we do here.
The chat's sticking around. Oh, that's cool.
They're always sticking around. They like it here. You know why? You know why? The beverages are always cold. The pool is always a nice temperature. The hot tub is hotter. The sun is always shining. And the nights are always starry-skied, moonless.
Yeah.
Until Joe pulls his swim trunks down.
And then the moon comes out.
Then the moon comes out.
And we're dealing with some moon. Full moon.
Yep. It's true. It happens.
You see what Joe said in chat. Fun fact, the pool on the Titanic still has water in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't say too soon. Been plenty of time to go.
I think I missed some questions here. Excuse me. What do you think of Green Street's video on the New York Post? Did you see that?
Mm-mm.
You might want to go to the New York Post YouTube channel.
Oh.
It was pretty amazeballs.
See what comes up here. So which one is it? The gymnast? No. That's
it deals with the what do they call it? Paranormal. The Pentagon Ghostbusters. That reminds me, I'm going to change the name of this one. That's going to bug me. That is going to bug me. Edit.
Was it a video today, Dave? What am I looking for?
It came out yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's some twisted people just reading these headlines on these videos. It's like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. That's the way they do it, man.
Some clown beheaded his own dad.
You hear it now? Get rid of that gremlin. There we go.
One day ago. Oh, Ghostbusters, Rogue Military. Pentagon's Ghostbusters? Is that the ones you're talking about?
Yeah.
I didn't. What is this? It's 25 minutes long, so I'll have to check that out sometime. But what's the meat and taters of what I'm looking at here?
Basically, he calls out a bunch of people from the Pentagon and basically says, it's all pretty much a shell game.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird time to be alive because you wake up and you don't know what the world's going to be like until you start looking at things and going, oh, wow, that happened. All that happened.
Yep.
Life moves pretty fast. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Did you recognize that?
Who'd you have on your show tonight?
It was just my my adult son, Sheldon. He came on and co-hosted with me tonight.
Cool.
Yeah.
Does he call you B?
No, and I'm not encouraging that. No, I'm not encouraging that for my son.
My son is in the habit now of calling me Dave.
Really? How old is your son?
He's 12. Just turned.
Oh, okay.
All of a sudden lately it's been like, hey, Dave. I'm like, so I finally said to him the other day, I said, You can call me dad, father, or daddy.
Mm-hmm.
I said, otherwise, I will break you.
I need your respect.
And he looks at me. He goes, are you serious? I said, yes. I will break you. I will tear you limb from limb. and then I will score on an empty net in your hockey rink. And I will win.
That is funny.
Yeah. I will say this. He's a good boy. Very good boy. I know he's doing it to tease me, so I don't take it too seriously.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And plus, that's kind of what kids do, is they have to test the old man. Especially boys, they got to test the old man.
Yeah.
It's amazing. As men, we're always ready for the son, the preteen or teen son, to test us. But when our daughters start to test us, we're like whiny, crying wimps. Like, my baby girl, why is she treating me this way? My baby girl doesn't love me. It's true. It's true.
I never had any daughters, so I don't know. I've only had boys. But, yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh, yeah, man. Did I do number 4? Yeah, I mistitled this one now. Son of a. I got to rename that one SOR 4. All right.
So do you do your shows a week in advance for distribution then, or?
No, they're being distributed. Well, right now they're being distributed on the podcast side.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
No. Speaking of podcasts, I got to come up with a podcast for Monday's release.
What's Monday?
Well, Monday's usually my release day, but I've taken a couple of weeks off from doing my podcast just because I finished season 6. I was taking a couple of weeks break, but I was going to start again this Monday, but I don't have any interviews lined up. So,
you know what you should do is, hold on, interview Tim about Flight 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
see if he'd do the show.
Sure. That would be a good one.
Yeah.
I may not actually release one on Monday just because it's my little boy's birthday as well. And maybe I'll just take an extra week. But
how old's your youngest?
Puts a little hole in the revenue stream when you don't put out episodes.
Yeah, that happened to me 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago, what?
Well, my audio sounded like I was sitting on the shitter.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Me too.
Bet you do. But I came on with you.
Then I got everybody in the audience like, your audio is terrible. Your audio sucks. It's like, okay, I've taken enough shit today.
Yeah.
I'm done. Time to go to bed.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to just unplug.
Yep.
Deal with it again the next day.
You got that right, Pontiac. Natasha, thank you for the Aussie chat.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Look at that. Natasha's 17 of 17.
Wow.
Look at that. That's
well done, Natasha.
Score. She's batting 1,000. Batting 1,000.
Moody Mongol says, having daughters allows you the fun of scaring all the boyfriends. That's a great game.
This is very true. My daughter, my young, well, she's 22 now.
Mm-hmm.
When she lived at home, or even when she's moved out for a few years, when she would bring, like, you know, get a new boyfriend or bring him home or anything, there's always that dinner, that introductory dinner. So this is my line, dude. So there's a couple things you need to know, because I'm very protective of my girl. So first off, no eye contact. Don't make eye contact with me. All right. Second, if you hurt her, I personally will not hurt you, but I have friends who will, and that's their job. Yeah. And I'd go through this entire speech. So then we'd finally sit down for dinner after I scare the daylights. And I say this right in front of my daughter. My daughter is killing herself laughing every time. Right? And so then I'd say, I bring out a few bottles of hot sauce on my table, right? And I'd say, would you like some hot sauce? Spice up your meal a little bit. It'll give you a little bit of zest.
Mm-hmm.
They always say yes.
And you make them pay for it.
Oh, yeah. It was a beautiful thing, man. Beautiful thing.
Oh, that's funny.
You give them one at about a couple 100,000 Scoville units that hits right off the bat. I got a special one for that.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a special one for that.
You like spicy food, Dave?
I like spicy food when I am in control of the spice.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. Except when it comes to hot wings.
Then you don't care who's in control, or you don't like spice?
No, I like spice on food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, Indian food,
Okay.
Mongolian food, love it. But I also, but I prefer to have control. Like if I'm eating hot sauce, I prefer to have control with how much I'm putting in and everything.
Sure.
And I got some stupid hot ones, man. Stupid hot ones. I have one in my cupboard. I've had it for 2 years. I haven't even opened it yet because the previous bottle that I had of it absolutely destroyed my guts.
Oh, God. Wow.
Yeah. Just destroyed my guts. And I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this, but apparently I'm going to do it.
Oh, no.
Right.
Oof.
So, yeah, destroyed my guts. And the name of it is called Ass Blaster.
Well, if there's anything to a name, then yeah.
Yeah. I had some habanero. And the problem is, this is the other part where I'm dumb. Okay. Is the longer you let it sit, you let these bottles sit, the hotter they get.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. The
that's
spices keep festering and morphing, and they get hotter and hotter.
Oof.
So I think right now in my fridge, I've got about 12 open bottles, 15 open bottles of hot sauce. Right. And then I think I've got, well, that's a 12 pack. I got 4 more bottles there. I probably have another 20 bottles of different hot sauces in my cupboard. Like, I got to start making some chili and eating this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. See, I've got a Minnesota palate, where it's like the spiciest thing that I eat is like black pepper.
Bread.
Yeah, it's milk. That's the spiciest thing I eat.
Hey, I'm Brent. Spiciest thing I eat is sourdough bread.
You betcha. Don't you know?
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Although I like sriracha and jalapenos are fine, but anything north of that, and I'm like, I'm in the fetal position somewhere.
Holy cow, my barber has nothing available until the 22nd.
Ooh.
Oh, we'll go the 23rd then. We'll do it like 10 a.m.
If he's worth waiting for.
Right? He is.
That's awesome.
He's very good. He's very good.
You should have like a standing reservation, like every so many weeks. He just knows you're going to.
He knows.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now I got to set my reservation code. Oh, that's another thing I ripped into the GoDaddy people about these stupid authentication codes.
Oh, yeah.
Getting tired of them.
I always skip them. Do it later, and I've never done it. I don't know if I should be broadcasting that, but
Oh, I'm set. We're booked.
Well, congratulations.
We're booked. Yeah, there we are. We're booked.
Well, good.
Yeah, that'll be good. I like
So
it.
what time are you heading over there tomorrow?
Hopefully I can get out of work early and then hopefully be out there by about 6:30 p.m.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, be careful, man.
We'll be careful.
Yeah.
We'll be careful. Safety first on everything.
Absolutely. Because it sounds like one of those places where you kind of literally could encounter anything,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true, dude.
Yeah. It's like if you go in a haunted house, you're going to deal with maybe a agitated spirit or something like that. And they can be dangerous, but for the most part, it's, if it gets uncomfortable, whatever. But if you're going to the woods, you might encounter a Bigfoot. So you kind of know that going in. But when you go there, it could be all the above. It's like multiple choice.
I'm more. Here's the thing with Tim and I. We know something is coming. Yeah. We don't know what, but we can feel it. That something significant is going to happen, not in a negative way.
Oh, good.
I'm not saying it'll be positive, but I don't think it'll be something like all of a sudden, a pair of mountain lions come in and start tearing the hell out of our bodies. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of meat there. They'll be eating for a while.
Sure. Yeah. That's interesting that you both have that kind of premonition, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you've been there a few times, you could feel the area.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet it sounds like a really powerful place. Someday I want you to show me that place. That'd be really cool.
Well, get your passport.
Yeah.
Drive the 8 out. How far down Idaho are you?
I'm about an hour from the Canadian border.
Are you near Bonner's Ferry?
Just south of there. Yep.
I got relatives in Bonner's Ferry.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, in the Mennonite community there.
Oh, you ever go visit?
Oh, hell, I don't follow that side of the family.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I was just thinking if you're ever...
I'm ostracized. The one thing I learned after my mother's funeral is how ostracized I am with that side of the family.
Really? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And to be honest with you, I actually asked my dad this about a month ago when it was the 2-year anniversary of my mom passing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Dad, what did I ever do to mom's side of the family that they don't like me? And he goes, honestly, I don't know.
Really?
I wasn't even invited to the family reunion in 2015.
Wow.
My aunts never called me. They called my sisters.
Really? So it was specific.
They never called me. So here's the story. I buy my house up here.
Good, I guess.
I move up here on July 5th. Buy my house and move in. Like literally 3 days later, find this house, move in August 1st because it was all ready to go. It was empty. My parents come up and my mom says, oh, so I can't wait to see you next week. I said, oh, are you and Dad coming up? And she's like, no, we'll see you at the family reunion. And I said, what family reunion? And she's like, didn't your aunts call you? Either of your aunts call you? And I said, no.
No.
And then all of a sudden she was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I was supposed to call you and tell you.
Oh, she was coming.
And I went, Mom, did my aunts call my sisters? Did either of my aunts call my sisters? Yes. I said, you weren't supposed to call me. They were. They didn't call me. I said, therefore, I'm not invited because it's on one of their properties. I'm not invited. And I've just moved here. I've just started a new job. I can't be asking for my first weekend off already.
Yeah.
So no, I will not be attending the family reunion.
Yeah. Wow.
And then it was weird because we went over to my mom's niece's house after the funeral for food, or a day or two after the funeral for food and everything. Because the one thing about the Mennonite community is they're really good at taking care of you food wise during your time of mourning.
Oh.
And and I see all my uncles and aunts and cousins. I literally almost stood alone the entire time I was in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that by virtue of doing this show that to them is some kind of affront?
I would say yes. There is a little bit of a family lie that my eldest sister pulled that made me look bad as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think about that too. Like, we love this stuff, and to us it's a journey and an exploration, but to some people it's an affront. It's like, you can't be looking into that stuff. It's like, well,
no, I think it's a lot of it is I just never got along with them.
Oh.
I remember my one aunt I went, this is where I kind of got the hint. I think I was 23 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting ready to go. I just got accepted into broadcasting school.
Oh.
And my aunt says, "Oh, what are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm just preparing for school. I got accepted to college." She goes, "Oh, where?" I told her my college. She goes, "Why are you going there? It's not like you're going to make anything of yourself."
Ooh. Wow.
And I looked at her and I was like, really? Like, I used to babysit her kids just like a couple of years previous. You know what I'm saying?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so funny because on that side of the family, they think I was a drunk.
Oh.
I don't drink. I would go out with my buddies. My buddies would get absolutely smash hammered.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be designated driver every weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? I just didn't like alcohol.
Sure.
I saw too much coming from an alcoholic family.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. So, apparently I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict, which I didn't try pot. The only drug I know that I've tried is pot.
Oh, okay.
And I tried pot when I was 22. Smoked it for a couple of years. Then my ex-wife and I found out we were pregnant. I was like, no, I'm done.
That's kind of how I quit too, actually. I used to smoke. And then when my oldest was coming, it's like, yeah, all right, time to upgrade and change gears a little bit here. So,
oh yeah,
it's
kind of cool though, because now it's just a joke. And I said to my dad, I said, the best part about this, Mom not being around anymore. He goes, "What's that?" I said, "I never have to deal with that side of the family again. Don't have to take their phone calls. Don't have to take anything. Just get the hell out."
So less shopping at Christmas.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Less cards to
I
send.
I wasn't even invited. I'll tell you a funny story. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was it last year? No. 2023. My sister calls me up and she's like, "Hey, are you coming down for Thanksgiving dinner?" I'm like, yeah. She goes, I'm really excited to see you guys. We'll see you at Dad's for dinner. Okay, because our first Thanksgiving without Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so about a few days prior to that, my nephew calls me up. I have two nephews with my one sister.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're coming down here. Are you bringing your fishing gear? I said, yeah, I'm bringing my fishing gear, man. Because it's salmon season on the river down there.
Ooh, nice.
And I hadn't fished the river in like 9 years. And during that time of the year, I used to fish the river between 4 and 6 times a week. Right?
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. Because I'm just a catch and release guy. I'd go for the sport.
Yeah.
The fun of it. And so he goes, okay, call me when you're on your way down. Okay. So I call him up. I said, hey, bud, I'm on my way down. Stop by the river on my way down, and then I'm going to be fishing Saturday. He's like, yeah, I can't make it. Sorry, uncle, I can't make it Saturday. Some plans have come up with the wife for that night with some friends, and it just can't make it. Okay, not a problem. Maybe on Sunday we could go before dinner. He goes, yeah, that sounds great. So on Saturday, I wake up and I go down. I literally wake up at 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the river at 5. I couldn't find a spot on the river to fish that I wanted to fish. It's crazy. There's so many guys out there.
Yeah.
That's the cool part.
Yeah.
And I go way upriver. I'm out of cell phone range. Remember, I left home at 4 o'clock, okay, in the morning. And at about 6 o'clock in the evening, I finally come out of it back into cell phone range. My phone blows up. And I've got messages from my partner. I got messages from my dad. And I call up my partner. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, we're heading to my other nephew's house.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the oldest one wanted to go fishing with me, but said he couldn't. So we're heading to the other nephew's house, his brother, younger brother, and he goes, "Yeah, we're heading there for an engagement party." I'm like, okay. And she goes, "Do you want to just meet us there, or do you want us to wait for you at Dad's house?" I'm like, "I'll meet you there." And 2 + 2 wasn't adding up to 4 at this time, right? 2 + 2 was, and so I hung up the phone, and my dad was already going there. I hung up the phone, and then I started thinking about it. Hold on a second here. 10 days ago, my sister asked if I was coming down for Thanksgiving and said yes. She knew I was coming.
Yeah.
And then my nephew, her eldest son, tells me that he has to cancel fishing because he has plans with his wife set up with their friends. So I called my partner up and I said, honey, we're not invited to this. They don't want us there. My daughter was not invited. Nothing. Right? So anyways, I said, we're not going. We're just go. I called up my dad and I said, Dad, we're going for dinner. We'll meet you back. I said, we're not invited to this. We're not wanted there. So we're not going to go someplace we're not wanted.
Right.
He's like, not a problem. And my dad knows the tension there a little bit. Right.
Okay.
So I'm the asshole now because here's why I'm the asshole. So I sat through that, okay? And I never said a thing. Sunday on Thanksgiving, not even brought up one bit, not one person. Both my nephews were there, the fiance, the wife of my nephews, my sister, her hubby, they're all there. His daughters are there. Nobody said a thing about the engagement party the night before in front of us. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is on Thanksgiving dinner. We eat, give the fake hugs to everybody. Everything's cool, right? Let's fast forward to last year.
Okay.
October or September of last year, my nephew sends me a text, not a phone call, a text. We'd like to know if you're coming to the wedding. Could you please RSVP? I ignore it. That was in August. Then this September one comes. my oldest nephew comes, and I held back his part of in all of this. And I told him what happened. I said, would you go? So your brother hasn't contacted me in years. Would you go?
Yeah.
It's because realistically, I think the only reason why I'm being invited is for the present. Right?
Yeah.
Or the cash, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the invites come out, and I don't know what it's like down in the US right now, but up here in Canada, the popular thing with young people who are getting married is having a 19 and over party.
Oh, okay.
Which means no kids allowed at your wedding.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Except for the ring bearers, right?
Right.
Or the flower girl and the ring bearer. So we look at the invite. My partner and I are invited. My son, who's 10 at the time, is not, or 11? 11? Yeah, he'd have been 11. He was not invited because of age restrictions. My stepdaughter, who I call my daughter, was not invited. My biological daughter was invited, but her boyfriend of the last number of years was not invited.
Oh, wow.
My dad was invited, but the lady he was seeing at the time was not invited. He was not allowed a +1.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I said no to the stag, and I texted my nephew back, and I said, no. I said, I've got new ownership at my daytime job. I'm not going to be able to make it, because literally I was having a rough time there.
Sure.
Right. And I no-showed the wedding. My dad goes to the wedding, and when my nephew came up to him afterwards to say, hi, Grandpa, I'm glad you're here. And he's like, of course I wouldn't miss it. He goes, but you and I are going to have a talk.
Ooh. Nice.
And he goes, you know that I am seeing somebody. And I am not, how did my dad put it? He goes, I am your grandfather. I am not a guest.
Yeah.
For you to treat me like a guest was very insultive. And my nephew threw my sister under the bus with that one. Because my sister is a very much of what will other people think kind of attitude. And because there was relatives from mom's side there, what would they think? So my dad ripped into my nephew, and he goes, on that note, now that we've had the conversation, we've eaten dinner, I've congratulated you on your marriage to your wife, and I love her to death. He goes, I am leaving now because I have plans with the woman I am seeing, and I refuse to be here alone.
Good for him. Wow.
And I was like, fuck yeah, Dad.
Put your horns up for Dad.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's
it was
good.
Awesome.
Good for him. Yeah, it sounds like they needed a course correction. Jeez.
Oh yeah, I loved it. You know, and my sister hasn't called me since, and I'm quite okay with that.
Yeah,
quite okay.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you're missing anything, brother.
No,
anything.
I'm not.
It's a lot.
I'm not. You know, I got my own thing going on. You know, much like we all have our own thing going on. That kind of led to my, like last year when I was went through a really bad depression last year, and that really led to my understanding of myself that I'm at that time I'm 51 years old. I'm tired of being people shitting on me for no reason and not saying anything. I'm tired of being blamed.
Yeah.
So that was my wake up call to give the middle finger to my
doing some amazing
my
stuff,
world.
brother.
And it's weird because you can ask anybody who's a regular here in the chat room. I never blocked anybody. Rarely, unless they were like a complete troll, I never blocked anybody. And now I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care. There are people that are on our block list that I never thought I would block. Right?
We just had to block somebody tonight. It was just, and somebody that's been around for months and months and just suddenly just decided to blow a gasket and go full dick mode in the chat. And I was like, oh, well, this is done. So, yeah.
Yep.
It's not worth it.
Yep. I have zero tolerance now.
Yeah.
You know, and every now and again, you know, and you probably notice it too, that there's every 6 to 7 months, there's a rotation of guests or of people watching your show.
Yeah.
It's every 6 to 7 months, but there's always that one person that for some reason, you don't know what you did, but you pissed them off.
Oh, I know.
So they start ripping you.
No.
You know, I just had one of those a couple weeks ago. Didn't expect it. The one person I didn't expect it from. And all of a sudden he was just like ripping me a new one.
Wow.
And I was like, see ya. Don't care. Don't care anymore.
That's interesting. Sometime when we talk, I got to fill you in on something too. But
yeah.
It was, it is funny though. And I've noticed that too. Like there's people that will live, eat, and breathe the show for a period of time. And then all of a sudden they're gone. And it's like, what happened? Where did they go? What's going on? You know, and it's because the reason that I notice is because of course you care about these people, you get to know them and you see them and they're a part of your world and your sphere and your family. And then suddenly they're gone and they just won't talk anymore. Even if you message them like everything okay, just crickets. So
my favorite, and it's happened to me about 5-6 times, is when you get blamed for something that started in a different show's chat room.
Wow.
Yeah, and then it carries over to yours and you're not getting involved, so now you're the asshole.
Yeah.
That's happened a few times.
There's some shows out there that seem to have a lot of drama, you know, and that's, I don't know enough about it to know, well, are they doing that or is it just finding them, whatever, but I've been really fortunate in that regard. And it sounds like you have too, that not a lot of that has gone on in our worlds.
It's taken a while to get there, but when I look at our team, you know, I think of, you know, whether it's Tim or Terry or Rob, who I hold Rob in a little bit higher esteem because of him being a host and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at the job Lee does, Grant does, Dirty Filth, Cat, Jay. The team is really put together nicely.
Yeah, you've built a good house.
It took a long time to get there, but the team is put together nicely.
Yeah, you've got a great group of people.
Yeah, they're very good. They're very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get going because let's see. Sweet Robbie G is going to do a talk show here. He's waiting at me to get my fat ass off the air. So, Rob, you could have told me about 20 minutes ago to shut up because you wanted to start your show. Could have done that.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, brother. It was a blast.
No problem.
And good night, everybody.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you tonight to our super chatters, T-Bone, Blue Cruise, Greg, and Natasha. Very much appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. Sweet Robbie G, the next couple of nights here on the Mighty SOR. So make sure you check them on out. And, of course, I will be back on Monday, or as the French say, lundi. I got a surprise for you. I do. Varla Ventura will return. It's not a regular night, but she will return for a quick one. We'll give you an update on her. It's been amazing. See you all very, very soon. Have a great night. Don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell. Take care.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.